Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's school committee meeting. Jen, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a consent agenda, the minutes from November 7th, 2019, and oath to bills and payroll.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. We have two sections of the meeting for input from interested citizens, one now and one towards the end of the meeting. Is there anybody here who has any business for the school committee? Seeing none, we'll move into recognition. Our student representative report, Madeline O'Meara is here tonight.
All right. So for Shaker Lane, 2 sensory floors have been created for students when they need a movement break. Russell Street, there was the Empowering Families Reading Night last Thursday. That gives the opportunity to read to teachers and the mascot and the therapy dog, Harley, which I didn't know they had a therapy dog. I'm suggesting implementing that at the high school too, because that would be really fun. The 5th grade also visited the Institute of Contemporary Art this week, and there's a gratitude project also. There's a interactive turkey in the cafeteria, which has feathers which represent all the things the students are grateful for. And there are parent-teacher conferences at the start of December. And for the middle school, next week is the famed Turkey Olympics. Very fun. And essentially the grade levels earn like different trophies depending on which flex block wins. And for the high school, we also have Powder Puff on the 26th. So that's going to be really fun too.
All right, thank you. Littleton Electric Light and Water Department.
I don't know all of the details,
okay.
But
once again, Littleton Electric Light and Water Department has come to the table and helped us move our STEM programming forward within our district. This year they awarded $24,700 to continue to buy and also replace advanced physics equipment in our high school. So just wanted to thank them once again. Throughout the time that I've been here, and I'm sure beyond, we've benefited greatly from the grants that they provide to us. Our maker spaces, for example, are one such opportunity that was actualized as a result of their generous donation. And we accept this with much gratitude.
Because this is a large grant over our limit, we do require a motion, but before we have that, so it's $24,700 to purchase advanced physics equipment. Now, we're good that the space-time continuum is going to continue to move in the direction we expect it to. But that's a lot of advanced physics equipment, I think, personally. Daryl, like, good?
Well, we might get a sample black hole or something, you know?
Make sure that we're not getting ourselves in somewhere we don't want to be. But we do require a motion to accept this gift.
Make a motion to accept the $24,700 grant from Littleton Electric and Light and Water Department.
seconded.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Any other recognition, Dr. Clenchey?
Just a couple of short ones. We've had another strong fall sports season. I can't believe that December is around the corner and we're starting our winter sports program. December, as we all know, is going to be a very busy month. Lots of great activities in all of our schools. So for the audience that's listening, please check our calendars. You could virtually be out every night if you so chose. So exciting time of the year. I just want to piggyback off of what Madeline had said about therapy dogs. We are in the process of contracting with a couple of handlers with 2 therapy dogs in our district. The principals of 3 out of 4 of our schools have handed in protocols to me that I've had a chance to look at and have approved, and now we're just waiting for the handlers to come in and sign a contract with us, and then we will start rolling this out in the near future. So you may, in fact, see therapy dogs at the high school.
I don't think anyone's opposed to that at the high school. So.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is old business, but we're going to postpone that and go through our presentations, and then we'll circle back to the to our business items. So under presentations, the first one we have is the Great Kindness Challenge. Tracy Turner and Jennifer Fudo.
Thank you for giving us some time on your agenda this evening. This year, the Littleton Public Schools is planning to participate in the Great Kindness Challenge. It's going to happen the week of January 27th, and all 4 schools have signed on to participate. The Great Kindness Challenge is an international proactive bullying prevention initiative. So we're looking to promote positive school culture and for 1 week engage students in, actively engage students in participating in acts of kindness. We have some statistics from the past year. So last year they had 13 million students who participated and over 24,000 schools and over 110 countries.
So for the Great Kindness Challenge, there are lots of ways for us to promote kindness across the district. We are going to be doing advisory activities at the high school level, middle school level, Russell Street, and at Shaker Lane as well. All schools will have developmentally appropriate activities for kids. One of the things that we are doing district-wide, which we are hoping that we will get while we're talking with you, is we want to do a kindness tunnel. We want to have community members at the doors welcoming kids in on January 27th at all 4 schools. What's great about this initiative is that this event is that it sort of operationalizes the definition of kindness. So we're not saying to kids, don't bully, we're saying to kids, do these things instead. And we'll have checklists for kids for different activities that they can do to, for random acts of kindness. We're going to be doing door decorating contests, other contests throughout the week, other challenges throughout the week at different schools. Schools will have daily kindness quotes as part of their announcements in the morning. Not only can schools participate, but we have family toolkits that we'll be sending home too for those families that want to extend this activity to their own families. Because we participate as a district with all 4 schools, we will become at the end of this week a kindness certified school district, which is a very big deal. There are only a few in Massachusetts right now that are kindness certified. Community involvement is really important for us, and that's why we're here asking for people. We know your schedules are so busy, but if you have time, at 1 school, at 4 schools, doesn't really matter, but if you could be part of that kindness tunnel, that would be great. We've spoken to the PTA, we've spoken to the Rotary, we plan to speak to other community agencies. We met with Dr. Clenchy earlier this week and talked about other organizations that we could reach out to in the town. So we're hoping to get huge town-wide involvement with this. We just added a quote for all of you. Do things for people not because of who they are or what they do in return, but because of who you are. And that's kind of what we want to promote with kids during this time.
Okay. Questions or comments?
It's a great idea. Anytime you can promote kindness in a school, I'm all for it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to both of you.
My only comment is, I did like what you guys said, is that a lot of our anti-bullying efforts are based on what you shouldn't do, which is sort of a, passive act, whereas this is active, acts. So I think that's pretty cool. Hopefully, it's something that the kids, after they go through it, you have a particular dates on it, but hopefully it'll extend past that.
That's where.
I'll put it in my calendar, and will you guys send out more information and
Yes,
details?
we will.
Thank you. You
Thank
can
you.
loop me in on that. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you for all your hard work and time that you've spent on this project. I know we've talked a number of times, and it's you put a lot of time and energy into this
Now,
project, so thank you.
If you get that certification, is this something you have to annually
So we're already signed up. We can continue to do this. It's something we can put on our website.
Mhm.
It's a seal that we actually get.
So you're looking at sustaining it year by year? Is
Yes.
that one of the goals?
Yes.
That'd be great. Thank you.
I also want to say it is a lot of work, but we're lucky that we have great administrators in this district who are on board and very helpful and very involved. So it's not just us carrying it. We're just the only two up here talking right now.
All right, awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next, yep.
So, maybe I'll direct it to Kelly here. So I think over the years we've talked about, are we a heart healthy community? We did one with the Red Cross for the CPR certification. We have this. We ought to see if there's something we could put in the schools that sort of collect up all of the different emblems of what we're been participating in here. Is kind of like a little bit more of a reminder, right as we enter the schools, highlighted in the.
If we figure out how, we'll add it to our district report, which was handed out to you this evening as well. So,
Yeah, but
it's a good
all these
idea.
different things here, it'd be nice for us to keep them a little bit front and forefront. The
good
signs
idea.
of suicide, there's a whole bunch of programs that we're actively participating in.
And I think it's a good point, because again, it speaks to the sustainability of the efforts across the community. Very few of these things are one-off type things. I mean, once they get their foot in the door, they keep bugging us over and over again and keep doing all these great things. And we do, as a community and as a school district, we've really risen to the challenge. And I think celebrating that in a more formal manner, I think, helps remind us of all the efforts that go forth. And a lot of people go through the buildings, and not just the students and staff, and I think it would help a lot. So anything you guys can do to fashion that would be great.
We can figure it out.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Daryl. All right, the next presentation is from Littleton Youth Baseball and Softball, Shaker Lane Field. Easy, Dan, easy.
So excited to get up here and talk about this.
You know, I'm a little shaky because I was just in jail, but. So, first of all, I just wanted to thank the school committee for having us here tonight. I don't want to take too much of your time, but just by way of introduction, I know some of you, but my name is Dan Schuffrin. I've been a resident of Littleton for 15 years. We have 3 children, all in the school system. My wife and I, we've volunteered on all sorts of PTAs and participated in different sports leagues. I've had the pleasure of being a part of the Littleton Youth Baseball and Softball Association for the last 8, and have been fortunate enough to be president for the last 3. I will say that anything that I'm going to say tonight is not just my opinions. This is culmination of over 75 board members, volunteers, coaches, staff that we have that help out every season. So there's a lot that goes into it, and just like everything goes around in town, it truly takes a village. So I think it's in that spirit that we're trying to make continuous improvements to the league and the offerings that we have for the kids. So that's really kind of the backdrop here. With me tonight is Norm Young. He's also been involved with the league for a number of years, instrumental in certainly coaching, but also particularly for this project, he's been kind of my partner in advancing things forward and hopefully bringing the proposal and ultimately, we hope, execution of the project going forward. So thank you all for having us here tonight. Thank you. So very quickly, I'll get to the point. There's really 2 things that we want to cover tonight and hopefully get approval from you. One has to do with sponsorship and signage that we have in the fields, and making some slight modifications to that, which I'll get to probably second. The other one is around making specific enhancements to the Shaker Lane field itself, which is the primary youth field, and that's around adding lights to the field as well as a scoreboard. And I have some materials here that we can go through in terms of the rationale and kind of how we're covering things and what it means, and hopefully be able to answer any questions that you have. So while I would really like to be able to get approval from the board here, specifically around the signage so we can begin our fundraising efforts for the spring season, I do recognize there may be some questions and other legwork that needs to get done before we get final approval on adding any lights to the field. So certainly taking away from here any questions or further information that you guys need, I'm happy to do that and come back at a later date if that's not required. Great. So just for some background, kind of why are we doing some of this? So over the last 3 years, we've been very fortunate as a league where the registration has grown by over 40%, which is kind of bucking the trend, at least nationally, but also locally of what we've seen across baseball and softball programs throughout the state and the country. I will say in particular, we've seen about 100% increase in registrations for girls softball, which is actually fantastic. So it's really been both boys and girls that we've seen an increase, but significantly on the girls side. So as it says here, right now our total yearly registration is over about 350 players. Now the bulk of that, of course, is in the spring, which is our main season, but we have added both a summer program and a fall program as well. And I've just listed, I'm not going to go through them all, but I've just listed some of the things that we have just added for additional benefits and features for the players in the league over the last 3 years. And some of this is required, so there was a new bat standard that was put in place by both Little League and Cal Ripken, so we had to purchase bats. But other things we were just looking to make things better for the experience for the kids. So we partner with local businesses like Title Boxing and Woodshed Training, where we provide preseason work. And actually, through the generosity of you all, we actually get into the gyms once basketball leaves in the winter and provide some preseason training opportunities for them. So it really is, everybody coming together and trying to make things better for the kids. We've self-funded all of these different things that we've purchased or worked through sponsorship and donations to provide them. And that's been great. And if you go to the next slide, we're starting to set our sights even higher for things that we'd like to do to make improvements. The challenge, of course, is for a lot of the things that we like to do, it requires a lot more funding than we would normally get from registrations. And so that's where a lot of our fundraising efforts come in. However, I think the main point here is we're not looking to ask the town or any group for funding. We want to continue to self-fund and do all these things ourselves. It's more of just the ability to do it and making sure everyone's comfortable with the things that we're proposing. So just want to make sure people realize we're not asking for any money. This is something that we just want to do ourselves. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, there's two specific enhancements that we want to make to Shaker Lane. One is around field lighting. The other is around a new scoreboard. And I'll talk a little bit about placement and some of the things and the needs as we go forward. So specifically from the reason for lights at Shaker Lane Field, I just mentioned that our registrations have gone up quite a bit over the last several years, which is a great problem to have. The challenge that we actually have is around fitting all the teams and practices and games in on the field, particularly early in the spring season. The sun sets quite early, and so we end up having to cancel or curtail games because the sun sets. It also just prevents us from utilizing longer, basically utilizing the field longer should we need it. What we'd like to do is kind of look for ways of having more space available for the kids. We've thought about other alternatives, as it says here. Certainly building additional fields is one, but that's obviously very costly and timely, and right now things that have been going on in town with the discussion of the past several years, potentially politically charged. So the thought of just utilizing our existing fields a little bit longer seems to make the most economical sense and certainly the simplest to implement. Really what we're talking about here, though, is not using it that much more, right? So we're talking about probably 45 minutes to an hour more use per night, particularly in the spring season, just to get us through the ends of these games. So you're talking about going till 8 o'clock, maybe 8:30. Now, of course, there'll be ancillary benefits for other uses of the field, for other things that the town uses. So the adult softball league, when they get involved in the summer, this could potentially increase their season. That's not really up to us. We'll leave that up to you and to figure out how we want to put some rules in place for how long the lights can stay on for. But this is really the key driver. And I think one of the key features here that we're grateful for is with the new LED technology, it doesn't really have any impact on the surrounding houses. I mean, first of all, where Shaker Lane Field is, there aren't really houses close to the field itself, but particularly with the new technology, there's really no light pollution, so it kind of stays on the field and then quickly dissipates once you get away from the field. I have a slide in the back which kind of shows the light dispersion if you're specifically interested in light levels, but it really doesn't have any impact on anybody else. On the scoreboard side, people may not be aware there actually is a scoreboard, or it doesn't work. There has been one for a number of years. It's actually on top of what was the snack shack. We use it for storage now. It was donated by Very Fine, so it shows you how old it is, because Very Fine obviously doesn't exist anymore. So we'd obviously like to replace that and provide a new scoreboard. There's no real tangible benefit per se for having a scoreboard other than just a nice enhancement to the field. I have a diagram which sort of where we want to put it. What we can do, however, is make it sort of self-funded. So the modern scoreboards, I've provided a few examples here on the slide. You can see that there are panels on either the sides or the bottom where you can actually have some sponsorship. And given that this is more of a permanent structure as opposed to some of the signage that we have now, these sponsorships can sell for a lot more, which actually cover the cost of the scoreboard. So, part of our ask would be, if we're allowed to put the scoreboard up, that we can also consider having these sponsorship panels that we can use to fund the cost of the scoreboard itself. The good news here is with the technology advancements, they're solar now, so there's no electrical requirements of running any lines to feed this. It's sort of self-standing out in the outfield and gets its power, and there's an app that controls everything, so it really is pretty self-contained and slick. So it's a nice thing that we can add as an enhancement to the field, but it doesn't really cost us anything or create any real infrastructure issues. So this slide just depicts the location of where the light poles and where the scoreboard would be. I realize now on the screen that it's very small, so I will try to walk you through here. I guess maybe you can see there are 4 boxes in white and 1 box that's black. The 4 white boxes would be the locations of the poles, where the black is where we're proposing the location of the scoreboard out in sort of right center field. Again, this is just for that main field behind the Shaker Lane School. We've worked with a lighting company called Musco, who probably you're familiar with. They actually did the lighting over at Alumni Field. So they're probably the preeminent lighting company for sports fields, at least in the country. And so they have very sophisticated analysis and tools to figure out the right locations of where the light poles should be. So this is at least the proposal. Now, of course, if we do decide to move forward, there would be some work that we need to get done around what's below ground. Is there any issues with putting the poles exactly where they are? If there's anything to do with any piping, et cetera, we would obviously explore that. So if things had to be tweaked a little bit, we could. But this should give you a rough idea of the number of poles, only being 4, and where the locations would be. Is there any questions so far, or should I just continue on?
Okay.
Okay. So moving on to fundraising. So as I mentioned, we have been able to do all the things for the league that we've done over the last several years, self-funded, right? And I think a lot of people are probably familiar with some of the funding activities that we do. The main one being Can Day, which is, as it sounds, is we just have the kids stand out there with cans at different locations one day a week. It's on election day, asking for donations. So nothing fancy, but it has historically at least been our biggest fundraiser. Brings in about $3,000, which is nothing to sneeze at. But again, that's limited to what we can use that funding for. Several years ago, we said, hey, look, for a lot of the ambitious projects that we want to take on, really does require significant more fundraising efforts. And so we kind of looked to the school board. We went through Park and Rec at the time to allow us to put signage, field signage up, and through the approval there, we did. And that really just requires, there's a 6-foot by 3-foot banners that we attach to the fences by the fields. What we had agreed at the time was we would have the coaches go and put all these signs up before each game and then take them down after each game. At the beginning, we only had a few signs, and so it only took a couple minutes. As we've kind of improved our fundraising efforts, we now have 15, 20 or more sponsors from different local businesses, et cetera. So now we're bumping up against the logistical problems of being able to physically do this before and after each game, because it takes a bunch of time to put all the signs up. In looking at other towns and what they do, a lot of them have these signs they just put up for the season, for the spring season. So it's, as I said here, it's about 10 weeks, from around mid-April to end of June. They put them up at the beginning of the season, they take them down at the end of the season. It's sort of the same thing. That would actually be a huge help for us because, one, it would enable us to probably get a little bit more funding because of the length of time that the signs are up. But also to be able to enable us to get more signs up because at this point, we just can't spend the time to have these coaches putting up signs rather than coaching the kids. And so that's probably the biggest ask that we have tonight for the school committee, is if you'd enable us to, for the spring season at least, move forward with putting the signs up at the very beginning of the season and leaving them up there from April until June and then taking them down at the end of the season.
Okay.
Okay. Actually, if you just go back one slide real quickly, thank you. You know, we have also, this isn't the only thing that we're thinking about in terms of raising money. We did something for the first time last year, which was a no pun, well, I guess pun intended, a big hit. We instituted a hit-a-thon for all of our players, which was great, and the community really stepped up. We raised quite a bit of money, which we're going to be doing the same thing again this year. We've also, I think people have heard, have reached out to the state reps, and they were able to secure in the budget this year $50,000 specifically for this project. So at this point, between the money that we've raised historically and the very generous earmark that we got from the state budget, we actually have enough money to pay for all of the lights and installation that we'd like to do next year. So there's no, we'd like to do this at some point in the future. We have the money, we have the plans, we just like the approval to go ahead and move forward with the project. The last thing that I would say is, as we think about other ways of raising more money without going to the town to ask for anything, there is a unique opportunity at the Shaker Lane field itself. So I think people are aware that in the left field, outfield fence, it's a very large fence out there. We've historically not put any type of signage or sponsorship up there. We've stuck to just the fences in the front. With your approval, we'd like to be able to, just similarly for the spring season, put up some slightly larger banners there and use that as probably another sponsorship level that we can seek out for local businesses. Again, we're not trying to get different types of business, and I have a list that I can provide to you all of the businesses that we have as sponsors, and they're all, you know, either parent-run businesses around, you know, realty, construction. You have Acton Toyota, Littleton Storage Solutions, that type of stuff. So there's nothing offensive or things that you wouldn't be appropriate for school grounds. So we would certainly adhere to that for any type of additional sponsorship that we would get. Next slide, please. So we're very excited. I'm very excited about the possibility of doing this, because it's been certainly a long time coming for our plans. We'd love to move forward and to be able to do this in time for the start of the spring season next year. So there's still quite a bit of planning and effort that goes into doing this. So we're trying to get in front of the school committee now to make sure that any concerns or questions that you guys have, we can address those, come back if we need to, with hopefully satisfactory answers, to make sure that it's comfortable with us moving forward to do this probably in the late March, early April timeframe, so that we have the lights available for the next spring season.
Before we dive into questions and discussion, I would like to, we basically have two things that we're going to consider here. One is the lighting and scoreboard, and the other is the enhancement or changes to the way they do their sponsorship at that field. So let's focus first on the lights and scoreboard, and then once we're finished with that, and we entertain any motions relative to that, we'll segue into the discussion about the banners and advertising. Okay? All right. Questions? Erica, Daryl, start on that side.
Just one, and sorry, Mike, it kind of goes into both categories.
I know it's going to be a little bland, but it's all right.
I'm just wondering if there's any market saturation in terms of the businesses that are going to be available to donate for, like, the scoreboard and the large banners in the outfield. If we, you know, I know Alumni Field is looking for people to, you know, sponsors, and the library is looking for companies to sponsor room names and things like that. And I'm just wondering if we think that there's going to be enough local companies that are going to be able to provide this support.
So I could probably hand this out to you, give you a list of our sponsors for the past year. Not sure I have enough.
I can share.
Here, yeah, we can
I'll let you two share. So I've broken things down here to show you a lot of these sponsors are actually from parents that are in the league.
Okay.
And then the rest of them, quite honestly, are just people that we've reached out to, and they just sign up year after year, right? So it's not, these really aren't new sponsorships that we get year over year. As occasionally we do, so this actually past year we got about 4 new sponsors. And so maybe a few come in, a few go out, but by and large, these are sponsors that come back year after year. As it relates to the scoreboard, I think that's a really good question, because you're talking about different sponsorship level. So that's typically where you'd see something like Emerson Urgent Care, like a hospital that might be able to pony up $5 grand, $7 grand, $10 grand, something like that, where we're getting from these folks anywhere from $250 to $750. So you're talking a different level of sponsorship. So you need probably something a little bit larger of a company. Again, something that's suitable for advertising, but that's something that we would have to actively look to see some type of sponsorship that would be willing to do that. If not, then there's always the opportunity for us to just self-fund it and not have any sponsorship signs. So for us, it's more about having the scoreboard. We'd love to be able to have panels for sponsors to pay for it. If we can't, then we wait to see if we have enough money to fund it ourselves, just put it up without sponsors.
I think it's a good question relative, just generically as a community, as we think about, it's clear that groups are becoming more ambitious and more organized about this, all for the right reason. In the library, baseball, alumni field, it's a good idea, but you're right. At some point, somebody's going to get left out, or you're not going to be able to slice the pie up in a manner that lets everybody get to every fundraising goal they have. On the other hand, from our perspective as a school committee, that doesn't really change the outcome for us, right? It just means there's less signs up. At some point, we're going to know the next group that comes and says, we want to add 10 more signs. We're like, good luck with that, because the group that came before you, they tried and they failed because the market seems like it's saturated, and that could very well happen. As a matter of fact, I would argue that it's a when, not if question. And then, maybe at some point it becomes a coordination effort where there's a cooperative effort to make sure everybody gets, a little bite at the trough instead of one big group, first come, first serve, taking all of it. So
the other thing that I would add is the list that I put out there in terms of the enhancements made over the past several years, we've taken an approach of doing in-kind donations. So for instance, at Bats Training Center in Boxborough, they don't give us any money, but they give us free cage time, right? So in exchange, we'll put their name on the back of some kids' jerseys, and we'll put a sign up at the field. As I mentioned, Title Boxing, they've provided free classes for our oldest kids. We're talking right now and kind of finalizing plans with Woodshed Strength and Conditioning. They're not going to give us money, but they're going to provide free preseason training classes for like the younger kids. So all of these things, it's actually what we're trying to do is form these partnerships with different companies. It's going to help them, hopefully in the long run, but also help our kids. Doesn't mean that they're going to get money, but we want to at least offer to put up some signs and give them some sponsorship in the jersey. So those are the types of other ways that we look for sponsorship, and providing that benefit to the sponsor beyond just their business is giving these opportunities for signage, et cetera.
Thank you.
we'll stay on this, and we'll go to the lights second.
Okay.
Now you got me all messed up. All right, I'll flip there. So you want to do the advertising aspect?
Questions about advertising and marketing?
Okay,
and
so
signage.
you are familiar with our policy, because obviously you've been doing some in the past there. I do have some reservations about proceeding immediately with doing the full-time signage there. I mean, we held the public hearings before in terms of talking specifically about limiting it there, taking into account the parents' concerns about visibility from classrooms and the other pieces there. I think if we're going to change to allowing a more permanent presence of the thing here, I think we owe the public a public hearing on that change for it, just to make sure that we properly solicit any community response to it at this point. I knew, because it was quite divided at the time in terms of the reaction about us facilitating advertising in the schools piece there. So that would be my main comment on that. I share, you know, and I think we did hear from one business during some set of presentations, is some of them do have the concern, enough is enough sometimes in terms of how often organizations come back to them, or multiple organizations. And I think the community, all of our fundraising events need to be sensitive to that, to our business community there, because, you know, they're just as vital as our parents are, because I see a lot of times they're funding a lot of the donations for the various pieces here. Let me see. Yeah, I don't have a specific opinion on the fence. I think it more, you know, I think our temporary piece there, whether it's using the fence or the side pieces there, I don't have a concern about that. It's more about the permanent presence, or the 10-week presence. I won't call it a permanent presence, but it's an off event pieces there. We also may need to consider, this is relative to youth baseball, you know, the potential for other organizations in or other fields, because we need a policy that applies to all of our facilities, not just one of them. And Shaker Alumni Field becomes a big question at that point once we allow it to occur here. So that's sort of my, from a policy perspective, you know, my reservations right now.
We already have approved signage at Alumni Field. We haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
But that's more to support the field and not a specific organization, right?
Sure.
So if all of a sudden youth lacrosse wanted to put up signs at Alumni Field, are we gonna
Right.
allow that?
Right,
Yes,
that's a good point.
That's what I mean, the broader policy implications.
And I agree with Daryl. I think that the right way to handle it is to create an opportunity on our agenda in the near future for public input on generically what are we comfortable with? Are we comfortable as a community with a more permanent messaging at our facilities? Because we have had a couple of presentations from Friends of Alumni Field with a very, what I would call, a relatively speaking, aggressive marketing signage strategy that we've never implemented before. Now, having said that, they've come before us a couple times. I haven't heard anybody, you know, sending me emails or buttonholing me at Donnellan's or anything saying, what the heck are you guys doing? You crazy. So I think that the community is acquiescing to a degree, but I think we owe it to them to more formally allow for the opportunity for feedback. And once we get it, then we can make a determination in specifically to this, and then beyond, and set a precedent that when other groups come before us, we can say, okay, we've queried the community. We now have a better idea of where we stand and what the thoughts are of the community in terms of how we implement something like this. Again, I personally feel like we've committed to it, and I haven't heard a lot of pushback, so I think we're going to be okay. Every group that we've had come before us has clearly understood our policy relative to the type of messaging that we would support. Now, we've talked about the type, but now we're getting into the volume, which is a discussion we haven't necessarily had as explicitly, and I think we need to have it. But assuming that everybody adheres to the type of messaging, I think as a community we're getting more comfortable with allowing for the volume and some of the permanency of the messaging, which is, I wouldn't say inescapable, but if we're not going to allow for some permanency, then we're clearly going to dictate the terms by which there are limitations on how much fundraising can be done, because the level of sponsorship they can seek will clearly be constrained if we decide that the volume or the permanency is X and not X, 1.25X or 1.5X.
I think the single purpose field, like the Shaker Lane baseball field, it's a little bit clear, but when you have multi-use fields,
right,
where multiple sports may be using them, either obviously not at the same time, but in a timeshare manner, there, lacrosse and a soccer field could easily overlap, or something there. And then which venue we're talking specifically here, because we got to be, the request specific to the Shaker Lane facility or any of our baseball, softball fields, which includes Jet Field at Alumni. So there's just the policy and implementation issues that we have to be concerned about.
I mean, I think that we do need to go through the protocols of it. Personally, I've had to put up these signs and take them down. And it is it's just a lot, and it falls on a lot of times the coaches and the parents. It's getting late, the mosquitoes are coming out, and we're sitting here folding up signs. And the other thing is that I just think of other communities, and Bolton comes to mind, where it's been done really well. And I think if it's done right, I can't imagine that you're going to have a lot of pushback, just because I think I know what kind of advertising that they have, and if it's done right, it looks great. And I think having lights at the field is going to just change everything. Or are we talking about the lights yet?
Not yet.
Yeah. But that'll help support the lights too.
No, that's a good point, because I was wondering about that, like if they're just like flappy pieces of, plastic and canvas with the cutouts and stuff.
But it'll look much better
right.
if it's a permanent sign than
Right.
what they're putting up there.
Yeah.
So that may be useful in terms of providing us some additional information in terms of what are some other representative towns that you'd be modeling your recommendation to us on. You can help us with some solid examples that we could either model policy towards or use as the specific talking points.
Sure. I mean, I can't speak specifically to the policy of other towns.
No,
but I can certainly talk to you about the fact that every single town that we play in our leagues, without exception, has permanent signage at their fields.
Yep.
Yeah, so some examples would be great to
Yep.
see those.
Yep.
Yeah, we can.
But
we
then
can
that
provide
will also
pictures.
make it easier for us to say that we're talking this type of permanent signage, not paper with cutouts for the wind that might get ruined over time,
Yep.
over the 10 weeks and
You
not
can take a
make
field
it.
trip. I know Norm has a truck, we could jump in the back.
I guess since you don't have to roll out the signs right now, you could go around and take the pictures and bring them back to us.
I will say.
I've done field trips in my other research on that policy, so.
We did have a little bit of foresight when we were doing this. All of our signs are vinyl, and specifically intended to withstand weather. So we wouldn't actually have to replace the signs that we have. It's more just keeping the signs that we have just up for that 10-week period. So it would be, other towns certainly have wood signage that they have like real permanency, and they don't take them down at all. But there are others that do have similar type vinyl signs that they leave up for the season. So we can certainly provide pictures. I can provide a list of all the towns that have them. Now, the other thing I will say is some other towns, no surprise, have their fields that aren't on school property, right?
Yep.
So some are private property or owned by the town and not by the school, and so the rules that govern their use is a little bit different. But you can at least see the examples of what they look like.
Yeah, that would be, I think, very useful for us.
Any other comments on the signage?
The only other question I have is if it's a permanent structure, and because you're a group that would be paying for them to be installed, what about the maintenance of them and ongoing costs?
Yeah, so are you talking about the lights?
No, the signs.
The signs on the
Sticking to the
scoreboard
signs for now.
specifically.
but I
Oh,
do
the
have
signs,
same question
yeah,
for
so the
lights.
scoreboard, either the scoreboard the scoreboard is gonna be self-sufficient because it's solar, right?
But I
So
mean, it
any
breaks or it has
any
to be
maintenance
cleaned or-
would be borne by the league.
And the other thing is that in discussions I've had with Mike Lynn, talking about potentially signage on the scoreboard at Alumni Field, those can actually come out too, they're panels.
Right.
So they can go in for the 10 weeks and come back out. So in that respect, you don't have to maintain the signage. Yes, you have to maintain the scoreboard, and I think Dan answered that question fine. But just nothing, at least as I understand it, nothing is permanent beyond the 10-week window that you guys are looking for. Everything will come down, including the signage on the scoreboard can come down if you could, I mean.
If that's what you get.
I think that would be our preference, I mean, I know there are scoreboards where they have panels, but they also, in order to pay for the scoreboard, somebody gets to literally paint their logo right into the scoreboard itself. Now, that's not what we're, you could do that, but we would prefer, I think, that you didn't do that, and that it was strictly panel-based, so that it can come out, and then the background itself is just your tiger paws and your blue and yellow and, whatever. And I think that would help us be able to, you know, agree that that's something we could support, semi-permanency.
Yeah, and I think along with that, my concern is that by putting these up and having to have somebody to move these in and out, we aren't incurring
Right,
expenses.
yeah,
That's-
right.
Yeah.
Everything that we would do on these fields, we bear the expense.
Yeah. And that leads me to it's a good point. There is a significant amount of effort expended by Littleton Youth Baseball and Softball on the fields themselves.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, our highway department does a great job cutting the grass, they grade it out and everything, but they just can't get there every day. So the days that they weren't able to wasn't in their normal cycle to get to Shaker Lane and take the equipment out and grade the field out and get it looking absolutely pristine, these guys do it. They come out with the rakes, they line the fields, they put the lime down, so,
Okay.
you know, they're already, they know that that's part of getting involved in this group, is you're gonna have to support and maintain the facility, and they commit themselves to doing that, or they commit others to doing that.
You'll see Norm down line in the field.
He's our field
Yeah.
maintenance
And
coordinator.
when it wasn't, there was somebody before Norm and somebody before
Yep.
pre-Norm. and it
Thank
just
you for
goes
saying
on
that,
and on.
Mike.
So,
It is
yeah.
not an insignificant effort.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So that happens, and it's a good point, but these
Yeah.
guys, this as a group, they've proven that they have a track record for supporting that. And, I mean, I can't make promises on the next generation that comes through, but.
Norm said he wanted it for a while.
Forever.
He wants a 20-year contract.
There you go.
All right, so are we good on the signage for the moment?
Yeah, just-
I think go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, just a comment. It's probably somewhat of a philosophical question, but, and it would deal with, is there stewardship involved in looking at fundraising and advertising within our community? Our community gives a lot every year, and I guess I'm of the belief that rather than let this continue to grow and then people not wanting to come to their front doors for fear of having to drop money into whatever, do we have and the town as well, have an obligation to ensure that we're not overly reliant on our citizens to fund all the wonderful things that we're doing in town? Can get out of control quite quickly if we're not careful. I mean, these are all great causes, but most of these businesses, when I look at them, are not large businesses, medium-sized, small businesses. At what point in time do they start not feeling good about what they have to give the community every year? Something to think about.
I mean, I understand the point you're making, and it's definitely valid, and I think that as someone who's been involved in some fundraising for other groups and talking to people that are, there is fatigue. You can already see it. It's getting harder. One of the typical things that you get involved in as a parent is, you know, there's a casino night or there's trivia night. Well, it's getting harder and harder to get people to support that because they are nonstop. And one of the things that this does is that it actually takes pressure off the individual givers and puts it on the institutional givers who, by the way, plenty of them are kicking down the door to get in and get this opportunity because they've seen the benefit to them in terms of, you know, their ability to market themselves. You know, we have been very clear, like marketing yourself in terms of goodwill to the community, that's all well and fine. Marketing yourself to sell more widgets or more, you know, slurm, no, not so much. As a matter of fact, not at all. But I actually think that, and there is a limit, like at what point, like we, as a community, governance set a baseline, like we're gonna do these things, and like you'll be able to have a baseball league by virtue of us creating fields and mowing the fields. And then these guys are saying, well, that's great, but that's a baseline and we wanna go up from there. Well, that's up to them. I mean, if they have the energy to do it. My bigger concern is sustainability. And knowing that this is semi-permanent signage that can come down, if these guys lose momentum, well, then the signage just doesn't happen anymore. And as a school department, no harm, no foul, right? We're okay. So that's what I'm looking for, is if the next group can't quite bring the same level of energy and commitment, we don't want to be on the hook where we've got this wooden sign or something that's baked into the scoreboard. Now it's there, and it doesn't look good because nobody's taking care of it. Nobody's even looking at it anymore. Now we've missed our opportunity to be good stewards. Question or comment?
Yeah, because it comes down to, and I think it goes back to the budgeting philosophy and the other pieces there. I think as a town, we have to be careful in terms of not making sure we become reliant on the
Correct.
advertising to
Exactly.
offset our budget aspects of it.
Right.
If we can't afford to run a baseball program within the schools, you know, then to say, well, do fundraising and have other people fund it for us, all we've done is really just shifted that budgetary burden
Absolutely.
to, you know, a fundraising event, and that's probably not where we should
Right,
be as a
exactly.
community.
To that
And-
point, I mean, that's why we haven't raised our athletic fee since we first implemented it. We haven't raised the bus fee since we first implemented it, and because we were very cognizant of the point you're making, Daryl, that we don't want to supplant our responsibility for budgeting buses and extracurricular activities, you know, at the expense of teachers, staffing, et cetera, and that's why we,
You know, and it has been pointed out by some members of the community every once in a while, you know, that you know, we do have some fundraising, you know, and it's not a knock against PTA, but PTA is buying some things that some people say,
Yes.
why aren't those
Yeah,
part of the
exactly.
budget?
No, there's no question.
There, and those are the things I think we have to be hypersensitive to
Right.
when we've done those types of pushes on it.
All right, so I think we talked about it. I think that the direction you get is that we need to go down another, take at least one more step, which is community outreach to see what the appetite is and what the feedback is. We'll make that happen sooner rather than later because you guys do want to try to get it done for this spring. I think that we can make a determination about whether or not we can or can't support that with plenty of window for you guys to get, if we do agree to it, that you can get it done.
But realistically, I think we're talking after the first of the year. I don't
Yeah.
think we're not going to get that done in one of our two meetings in December.
Right, but I think we could probably do it right after the holidays, knowing that everybody's settled down and is back in the groove, and then we can go ahead and.
It's fine. And I think my other deliverable for you is to provide some examples of surrounding
Yeah,
towns.
And if you could get that to us in December so that we could have it in.
Yeah, I'll reach out to the other presidents, and I'm sure they have pictures they can share.
All right, now, the lights.
The lights.
Any comments on the lights?
Of course.
He was ready 20 minutes.
Lead out.
Well, no, so the lights, had some experience with the lights because of other projects there. The budget you're planning on for those, like one of the big things that I think we saw in another project, Alumni Field, the lights themselves are not really the big driver, sometimes the cost driver, it's the poles to install them that are rated for current wind codes, which is like 100-mile-an-hour winds there, which seem to be the bigger cost driver on some of these things there. So do you have a real handle on this project cost?
Yeah, so, sorry, I was using shorthand for poles and lights, and base and installation for,
Yeah.
just said lights, but it really includes all of that. So this is the projected budget that we've gotten from Musco. We have examples of other towns. I think Bolton is actually doing it right now, putting lights up in their own field. So yes, the budget does include all of that.
Okay.
But yeah, the poles themselves are what drives the significant cost. The lights on the poles are not the cost driver.
Yeah. There, and then the other part, the 50K potential from the state.
It's not potential, it's already been dispersed.
Yes. So one of the challenges I think we need to understand is who does the project at that point, because I use Castle in the Trees as an example, which was a mixture of fundraising and the state funds. I think we made it through executing that project with the split management of which parts were paid out of which pot, but I'm not really sure that was the most successful model there, because of the state funds come along with everything paid for the state funds have to be done per all of the state regulations versus what could be done with the private funds and what could be applied to which piece of it there. So we may need to visit how we execute that project in terms of, is the school department or PMBC going to execute the project and they donate the money to supplement the 50K versus trying to run it as a split project. There's some logistics in that we may need to really work through for it there, because or where does Park and Rec fall into this, right? In terms of how this project actually gets
You
contracted.
guys thought about that, Dan? How are you gonna coordinate, like, let's say you get the green light, like, who's coordinating, bringing Musco on site to start digging holes and pouring concrete and?
Yeah, so that would be step 2, right? So step 2 is we still need to understand from highway what's subterranean, right? We would need to do some coring probably to make sure where we're gonna go. There's actually soil is suitable for doing it. We need to hook up with the electrician to make sure they're on site for when we do the installation. There'd be a contractor that's overseeing all the work. So all that still needs to be done. So I obviously don't want to start going down that path.
Yeah,
if we
no,
don't have
I'm just
approval.
saying that
Yeah.
how we execute the project
Right.
is actually a big deal.
Yep.
There, because of the, all of the players that need to be involved in coordinating that.
Yeah, and
as
that
well as
actually
executing.
is really what is probably that last bullet that I have on there is we would envision kind of a close partnership between what we're trying to do in the school committee.
You're 100% right. I think the right way for us to handle it, because we are not the experts on that, is for us, when we get ready to make a motion to support this, the language has to be, assuming that the project is approved and, vetted by PMBC and the school department, that it'll work. Both in terms of feasibility, in terms of siting the poles and getting them in the ground, and, heaven forbid we get bedrock or whatever it is, and then also that financially that we make it work.
Yeah, the project execution is a big deal on that.
But I think what we can do there is because if we make the motion conditionally like that, then that give green lights Littleton Youth Baseball and Softball to work with the business manager and the PMBC and the highway department to make sure this is a viable, and not only is it viable, but how would we execute on it? And then once they have dotted the i's and crossed the t's, they can come to us and say, yep, we're good to go, this is the timeline, these are the impacts, da-da-da-da, and then we can say, okay, good, it meets our conditions, we're good to go.
Yeah, I don't want to turn it into a big deal there, but we need to have proper oversight, because, I don't think we could have the administration be responsible to make
No.
sure that those core
No,
borings
not
are
at all,
done at
not
the
at all. I
right
think
spot,
we
and then
gotta-
if
we
there's
gotta
a
get
problem,
engineers
who's
involved.
actually going to lean on the contractor to
Yeah.
get it fixed?
Exactly.
That's why generally we end up bringing in a project manager
Right.
on a lot of projects.
I don't know that we would probably need an OPM type thing,
No,
but we do
but
need
somebody
oversight,
needs to
right.
have
Exactly.
their hand on the stick
Yeah,
relative to
absolutely.
the execution.
Representing the town and the school department, that's
Yeah.
not, right, that's representing our interests, not necessarily that are aligned with, but not exactly the same as LYBS's. So,
As well as it'll be on town property, and the town will end up having to make sure that it's dealt with. For it. Conceptually, I'm not against it. Again, probably, I probably need to zoom out a little bit on your picture there to make sure that, again, should we do, it's about notifying the neighbors. I know that we had a case where we put up lights and the neighbors were surprised. We want
Right.
to obviously avoid any of that type of situation there. So again, I'd suggest that we probably try to figure out.
That one was literally 2 poles with a couple of light bulbs on it, too. That was a different.
Yeah, I know, I know.
Yeah, different technology, but you're right, it did catch us by surprise, it caught the neighbors by surprise, and that was
And
unfortunate.
again, as it fostering good community relationships, I want to make sure we notified all of the people there and give them an opportunity to at least weigh in on it there, as part of the, again, agreement in principle. I think there's some wickets that we have to probably line out.
Yeah, I mean, we are not trying to do anything under the cover of darkness here, no pun intended. This is why we're coming now,
Yep.
right? Because it's 6 months ahead of when we'd like to do something, and all these things that you're raising are things that we said, yeah, we need to make sure that we're dotting our i's and crossing our t's and making sure everyone's comfortable with what the plan is, and then on the execution side, that we have everything in place to make sure that it goes off well and by everyone's standards. So everything that you're raising is exactly where we need to get to.
Yeah.
We just want to make sure you're comfortable with the approach is.
Let me see, I think that was, and this is just a random technical question. You don't need a pole, a light out by where you have C1.
No, so, this is the beauty.
Surprised that you get that much coverage
So,
on the sides.
so it's funny, we started this effort over a year ago and had lots of conversation with Littleton Electric. And originally, the thought was that they were gonna donate the poles to reduce the cost. The challenge is, of course, the poles that they have a limited height, right? And if we went with that design, then we would have to have poles that line the outfield. By going with Musco, the poles are taller, right? So you're talking 60 and 70-foot poles, which can create the better dispersion of the lights going downward. But that's why you don't need any poles in the outfield. You can have everything on the sidelines and only have 4 of them.
And then my last preference would be is we would treat the scoreboard and the lights as 2 separate projects so that they can proceed on independent timelines.
Of course, yeah.
There, so, that's all.
Erica, any thoughts on the lights?
No, my only question was, will it just be a manual control on the lights? They're not gonna come on at a certain time every night or anything like that?
Yeah, no, so there would be, it's gonna be fully automatic of however we wanna do it, right? So there'll be an app, if you're at the field, to turn it off, turn it on and turn it off. You can set governors on there that says lights can't go on after a certain time, et cetera. So it's really, the systems that they have now are so much more sophisticated and web-enabled that you can kind of do whatever you want.
Yeah.
No, I don't have any further questions. I think you guys know what needs to be done and know what needs to be done. And I'd love to see it work out because I think it would be awesome.
No, I can't think of anything. I was just wondering, alumni, the lights there we're happy with, and like they're people we trust.
Yeah, Musco
Okay.
is definitely
Yeah,
legit.
I mean, it's not I can choose,
yeah,
but.
right.
Yeah, Musco's the company, it's the Cadillac company of lights.
But I mean, it does beg a question of if it's a town project, which it kind of has to be, even though you guys aren't yet, right? We will
Do we need to go to
procurement
the-
guidelines and
Right.
bid guidelines that need to be
Yeah.
adhered to, but, you know,
That's all of the complications that happened with the Castle in the Trees.
Right.
You know, it was great in concept with the community build, but the sort of the mess behind the scenes was a mess. There, like, so that's why I'm tending maybe go that, once we get the costs all worked out, you end up doing a donation that goes with that grant,
Right.
and then it gets executed as a town project. I think would be the cleanest way to doing it, but I could talk with the PMBC people about that also.
How does it work with state funds? Is that,
But this-
do we pay it and then it's reimbursed to
No,
us?
it'll be a check.
You
cut
said it's
directly
already
to
been
the town.
dispersed, right?
The state funds have already, I've already gotten the commitments, and they're dispersing it in our account, or have dispersed it into our account.
So Castle on Trees came as a
It's-
check to the
yeah,
town.
So it's done, like, we have the money,
Okay.
or will over the course of the next few weeks. There's no contingencies other than we've laid out what our intention is for use of the funds. And it's a little bit broader, it's more around like field improvements, specifically, you know, here's what it is, and if you don't use it, you gotta give it back, this is something like that. So we have all the money. It would be more of the, how you want the project to be executed. Is it, you handle it, and we provide the funds to support the project? Is it, we do it and pay for it and then gift everything to the town? It's really whatever you want, but we'll cover the cost.
I think in general, we can't have an outside organization do contracting to build on school property.
Like that, yeah.
Or town property. It's not allowed. I don't think it's not allowed, but it's not done.
Right.
It's fine.
The liability can't be managed.
Sure.
What about Littleton Electric getting power back there? Is that gonna be an issue?
Not at all. So I've actually already facilitated a conversation between Littleton Electric and Musco to work out the technical details. And they've said they have to bump up the transformer that is behind the school already, but shouldn't be a problem to provide the power that's necessary.
All right, so I think you have some direction in terms of some information. We have direction in terms of we will get you guys back on the agenda for some public outreach and public input on both facets, the lighting and the signage. And we'll just keep it moving forward and see where we get to.
Sounds good. Great. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. The November 5th Cross-District Professional Development Day update.
Okay. I'll speak up.
Well, actually, it doesn't work that way. You have to alter the mic so you can actually hear you in the recording.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. Okay, so we're happy to be here this evening to discuss our Cross-District Professional Development Day that happened on November 5th, a couple weeks ago at this point. It was mentioned at our last meeting, and so we're happy to be here to kind of present you the overview of the day and what happened that day. And so Julie, Natalie, and I worked as a team, and I will say a great team, in making this day work for Littleton, and I could not have been able to do it without them, and so I really appreciate the fact that we were a team for this day. So this first slide shows our poster flyer for our day. What's interesting about this is that it was actually created by a Harvard student, and so we're appreciative of the fact that the student was able to create something that is really pleasing and gets the point across of the day. And so you can see the theme of the day was engaging students, and we really wanted to consider how we can do this more effectively and more deeply. And so we acknowledge that we can engage students in deeper learning more effectively when we take three major considerations into mind. And so the first is the 5 competencies of social emotional learning, and that's from CASEL, which is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. Those 5 competencies are in the colored boxes that have arrows going to them, and so those are self-management, self-awareness, responsible decision-making, social awareness, and relationship skills. The second area for consideration are the 4 C's, which is on the laptop that is there: collaboration, communication, creativity, and critical thinking. And the third consideration here is the idea of global connections. And so as we speak about this day and the ongoings of the day, you'll see these themes come up in every piece that we talk about.
So we had 3 districts. We had Air Shirley, Harvard, and Littleton. We had 276 teachers that all came to Littleton High School. That's a lot of teachers all at the same time. So we had 27 sessions. We had 14 sessions on one, 13 sessions on another. So people had choice as to where they wanted to go. We had our own teachers teaching these sessions. And what was great is we saw some really great connections between high school teachers and elementary teachers grouping together that you haven't seen teach before. So it was nice to see those collaborations and those connections. And for teachers from one school to speak to another about curriculum and what's going on in the classroom, it was very vital and very important for all of them to have that time.
Yeah, so as Beth has alluded to, there was a lot of planning collaboration across the districts that went into this PD Day. This is our 3rd year working together with the other districts. And we spend a lot of time really focusing on exactly what the theme is and what the best theme would be to kind of incorporate all the different elements that we want our teachers to be able to experience throughout that day. We struggled with trying to find a keynote that really hit on the topic of engaging students in deeper learning with all those different facets. So we started playing around with the idea of sort of having our own teachers present sort of a TED Talk style presentation. So this is what we ended up doing. So we kind of kicked off the day with what we called teacher talks. We had a representative from each district. And they gave about a 12 to 15 minute TED style talk. let's see, we had the topics of the talks were connections that cultivate teachers' engagement, and that was given by our own district's Heidi McGregor. Breaking down barriers for all, and student engagement starts with teacher engagement. So those TED Talks kind of kicked off the day and led into kind of what the specific breakout sessions were going to be, the topics we're going to be on. Another element of our first session here, after the teachers gave their presentations, we had a collaboration of student video. So we had over 150 students were interviewed across the 3 districts, and they were asked very similar questions about learning. What makes learning engaging for them? What makes learning fun? How do they connect what they're learning now with their future? So these were sort of the prompting questions, and so it was a compilation of the students' responses. And that was kind of produced over by Harvard. So that was a really impactful video. That was this sort of finished off this last chunk of the session 1. And that's.
So I think we left session 1 with high energy.
Yeah.
People were really excited. The fact that they were listening to their peers, which is really powerful. Just like it's powerful for our students to listen to other students, it's really powerful, for our teachers to listen to other teachers and experience and be able to relate and connect with them. And so we left that session with high energy going into session 2, which ended up being the first of 2 breakout sessions. And this is where Natalie was mentioning where our teachers and teachers from other districts led these sessions. And so we have listed out the 14 sessions that were offered. You can see it's a wide variety of sessions that were offered, ranging from multi-tiered system of support to mindfulness in the classroom, which was a really popular one, co-teaching, SEL. And so the mindfulness in the classroom is actually the only one that is repeated again in the afternoon. It filled up very quickly, and we had a lot of requests for doubling up on that one. And so that was great to have. The last one, I prefer not to. I was in communication with the teacher who facilitated that one. It was just a little funny because when we went back and forth, she responded with the title, I prefer not to, and then a description. At first I was like, oh, okay, she doesn't want to do the session. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to overstep boundaries. And then I realized that it was the title session that she was calling it, I prefer not to, which I thought was clever and a creative name for trying to motivate the unmotivated student. And so the idea of the session was that it's 80 minutes long, which gives us about 50 to 60 minutes of teaching or facilitator-led, and then 20 to 30 minutes time for the participants in that group to be able to reflect and create. And so reflect on what they did during that session and then immediately turn and create some sort of product that they could then use in their class, which was beneficial, and the teachers were able to create some things that they could put into play the next day. And so we have on this slide Rebecca Roper and Allison Bullock, who are 2 of our wonderful first grade teachers, and they led the mindfulness in the classroom session. And on our next slide, you see more pictures from the different sessions. And so again, top right is from the mindfulness in the classroom session, the group of teachers that participated in that session. To the left of that, we have 2 teachers, Susan Mitchell and Rita McKinley, who led the MTSS session. To the left of that, we have high school Spanish teacher Margot Gillen, who led a session on a new way to tell a story, which was very interactive with a few apps that teachers could immediately implement. Below that is the session led by Liz Berry about providing reading and writing feedback on Google. To the right of that, we have Michelle Hurley and Stephanie Russo, who led the session called Number Talks. And then to the right of that is the session by Beth Morgan, which that was a session titled I Prefer Not To.
So session 3, we had department grade level time. So we had to split the amount of people that we had into 2 lunch sessions. So one would do lunch, the other one would do a department grade level time, where they were able to have open and honest discussions about what was going on in their classroom. It was an unconference style, which is very different for people to use. It's very different where it's, let's talk about what we want to talk about right now. It's not structured, it's open. So
for those of us who are control enthusiasts like me, it's a little hard to go in with a open-minded, hey, let's talk about whatever today. You may have woken up this morning and had a really dark thought about, you know, this isn't working in my classroom. I wonder if there's someone else that's doing it differently, and you ran with it. So that was good for people to have that time. So we made sure to give that ample time from 11:30 to 1. And then while those people were having their department time, we were doing lunch. If you look on the left-hand side, that is the Mainer and me talking to the seafood specialist out of the Cape. We bought fish from this gentleman that was down on the Cape, so he brought some fish with him. We talked about the differences between quahogs and blood clams and regular clams. There is a difference, just in case anyone was curious. So he actually brought some fish that people could talk about and touch, and so it was very interactive. The lunch was very well done. They really worked hard on that. They had apples from Neshoba. We had ice cream from Kimball's Ice Cream. They just did a beautiful job, so thank you to the cafeteria staff again.
So the session for the first afternoon session was very similar to our breakout session, the first breakout session. And again, we had 14 offerings, and you can see that, you know, there are a variety of different topics, and same format as we had earlier in the day, where they would work for a period of time and then they'd have instruction for a period of time and then have some time to work and collaborate and create.
Yeah, so the top left is from the novel engineering, which Heidi McGregor led in the afternoon. Oh, yeah. And then the middle picture, you can see that is the critical thinking in science classroom, and that was a K-12 offering by Terrell Sawasik, a first grade teacher, and Valerie Finnerty, our 8th grade science teacher. To the right of that, we have Kate McCook, who discussed the revamping this the summer reading program, which she helped facilitate for this past summer at the high school, and was really well done. But as any good educator, we know that it can always be improved upon. And so that was an interesting session for them to be able to share what they did, but then discuss how can we improve it for next summer. Below that picture is again of the science with Terrell and Valerie. To the left of that, Kat Dale and Amy Metcalf had a great session on 3D printing bubble wands. And then to the left of that is actually Dr. Turner, who's here with us, and Michelle Smith, 3rd grade teacher, and they another really popular session on restorative practices. And so our last portion of the day was 15 minutes where we gave teachers time to reflect. And so they had a Google form to fill out. Gathering this information was not only important for us for future planning, but also a great time to be able to reflect on the day and allow teachers time to really think about what they learned throughout the day. Again, a really good practice that we encourage our students to do, and so we realize that it's also good for us as learners. And so you can see that 94.8% rated the day as good or better, and so we are very pleased with that. In reading through the reflections, I pulled out a couple here, but common themes throughout the reflections, I would say two, I mean, there are many, but two to highlight are the fact of faculty were very happy and excited that they could choose the sessions that they went to, and because we had a wide array, they were able to find something that they were interested in. And the second takeaway, I would say, from the reflections was the ability to have time to collaborate and talk with colleagues. As Natalie said, especially during that unconference time, it really allowed colleagues to open up and have that conversation with each other about anything related to within their department or their grade level.
So these are some of the activities that we did, because what's a conference without having some activities? We had a green screen where people could have props and take pictures and tweet with the hashtag of Lash Learns, Littleton, Air, Shirley, Harvard. Creative, huh? We also had a bingo game going, so as people would cross off the squares, we had prizes such as books that were available to further enhance staff's learning as well. It just brought the day a little bit more fun, so you see Julie and Beth there having a good time with their green screen, and we had a background image of the day. engaging students in deeper learning. So it really got creative, and it got people having a good time in the midst of this day as well.
Oh, and as you can see, there's a lot of planning, there's a lot of collaboration. This was a big effort by a lot of people to kind of create this day, logistics, and making sure that it was successful. So big thank you to our student volunteers. We had a handful of our students there helping direct, helping with tech. We had, the cafeteria staff was amazing. Lunch was, they did stellar job. Maintenance staff, as usual, the building looked beautiful. Planning committee, we put a lot of time and energy into that with the other districts. Really, really proud and really thankful for our teacher presenters, the ones that presented sessions and the ones that were brave enough to get on that stage. The first time doing this, you know, they really had to get up there and be vulnerable and share what they felt is really important about teaching and learning environments. So a big thank you to Heidi McGregor for being the first to kind of get up on that stage. So thank you, everyone.
Dr. Clenchini, comments?
Yeah, just that we do have some staff that during that day they go to a conference called NPEN, and it's for some of our specialist staff, special ed teachers, phys ed teachers, art teachers, music teachers. And that conference has been going on for a number of years, and at this point in time we just didn't feel that we could bring them back with us. It's part of our discussions as we move forward. They're happy where they are, and they're bringing back good ideas to the classroom, so we don't want to create a disbalance in any way. But when you mentioned the number of teachers that were there, obviously there were a number that chose that conference, because 3 districts together would certainly be larger than 200, whatever it was, 79 teachers. So, but it was a great day. This was our 3rd year of working with the 2 other districts. We started our first year out with a high school full-day conference. Then we expanded 6 to 12 our 2nd year, and we did the full cycle this year with pre-K through 12. So very exciting. The other 2 districts are pumped and committed to doing this for many, many years. So we have a good partnership going. So thank you.
Questions or comments?
Looks great.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys helping us understand both the benefit of doing it, but also the amount of work. I know that you guys go above and beyond. It's not in your normal work day. That your normal work day didn't stop just because you guys were planning on doing this. So we appreciate it. The benefit is obvious. We take advantage of the possibility that there could be balloting at the middle school on an election day. There wasn't this year, but we always program that day into the school calendar, and this is the benefit that we get from it. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, Mass Q and technology.
I'll just stay here all
I'm
night.
going to see the 2 of you the rest of the evening.
Are you tired of me yet?
No, not yet.
I'm going to have Dr. Turner come up with me as well, who was our social media ambassador for Littleton at MassQ. So a little bit about MassQ. MassQ is the Massachusetts Computer Users Educators. So it's the state's leading organization for educators with a passion for technology and education. We've been attending MassQ for quite some time now. Every year it gets bigger and bigger. It's held at Gillette Stadium. So all of the club boxes that you see around the football field, that's where the sessions are. So you walk around and back and up and down multiple times. And the sessions just keep getting better and better. It's quite amazing that every year I keep saying it can't get any better, and it gets better. So it's awesome. So this year we had 8 attendees from Littleton on Wednesday, 13 on Thursday. So the presenters from Littleton, this is probably one of the biggest we've ever had as far as number of presenters from our school. We had Heidi McGregor and TJ Gansenberg doing Makey Music. This book club is lit by Shayna Garlisi and Catherine Dale. Elementary 3D printing project with bubble wands. That was Amy Metcalf and Nicole Patterson. And I did one with the Department of Education and some top state reporting specialists called Everything You Always Wanted to Know But Were Afraid to Ask About State Reporting in SIF. So if you want to know what SIF is, it's School Interoperability Framework. So it was fun to create a shirt that said, I love SIF on it, which really created a buzz, which was quite funny. So our social media ambassador from Littleton Public Schools was Dr. Turner, and I want her to talk about her feelings and thoughts about masks.
So this was the first time I had ever gone, and I was able to go for both days, so it was amazing for me to do that. What I like about it is that it's not just about computer using educators. So I, as a special ed teacher, use a lot of technology. I'm a teacher who actually uses Snapchat with my kids. I was able to go to a session on book snaps, and I use book snaps for kids to do reading responses. So I can have them write out a quote from a book, or I can have them take a picture with Snapchat. They get to decorate it with their Bitmojis and everything, and then they have to write something to, why does that resonate with you? Why do you like that? So it was nice that I was able to learn how to do my own stickers. So instead of trying to quote a book, because I'm all about citations, we can just take a picture of the cover of the book and then make a sticker. And of course, I'm teaching the kids this, and they say, yeah, we're already done. We got the stickers. So, but it was great to be able to use that piece of it and teach the kids, like, you need to cite your work kind of thing. What I really liked about this is they did a lot of work on social emotional learning, which is really my passion. I was able to go to a bunch of different sessions on using literature to promote social emotional learning, which is great for me because that's how I choose novels to read with my students. And I teach English for some kids in a separate program other than going to a regular CP class. And I do a lot of that at the high school level. I met 2 teachers who do this at the middle school level. They actually asked me to join their PLN, so this is great. I made a lot of connections with people. The social media ambassador stuff was really great because I was all over the place. And as you said about the November 5th PD day, it's really nice to be able to choose things. I really value PD. I do a lot of reading on my own. I don't have a creative bone in my body, so I need things like this and books to help me bring things back to my kids. And there's nothing worse than going to a PD session and not liking it or feeling like it's not what you want. And so what was great about this is there were a couple of those that I went into. One was on safe schools, and I thought, this is great. This is, I can bring some of this back to my class. And I found out it was a vendor. So they, contract with schools. Well, that's not useful for me. I don't want to know. I want to know what you're doing in your school. So I was able to leave and go to something else. It was great. It wasn't a waste of time for me at all. I did a lot of networking for myself, which is important to me. I got to meet face-to-face teachers and educators that I follow on Twitter, principals, things like that. And I was actually asked to do a podcast for them. So it's great to be able to meet people who are doing similar things as you and expand your own learning, and also just keep yourself going and not feeling stagnant all the time, continuing to learn. So I'm hoping that I can go again next year. It was so much fun, and I was so grateful to be able to do that for both days.
Thank you, Dr. Turner.
Sure.
And the next picture on the slideshow is just when you have a certain number of staff that go from your school, they pick you to come down on the field and get a picture on the field. So that was a picture of us on day 2. Unfortunately, there were still some people missing because they were teaching a session. So we're basically told you need to be on the field at this time, and we don't really have a choice as far as what time to go out there.
Next year, I'm going on day 2. I want to be in the picture.
What's that?
Where's the bubble wand? I mean, 2 presentations in a row, and we hear about it, but not a single sample of what the 3D bubble wand.
Daryl, we're more than happy to show you. If you come by the school, we'll make a time for you to come by and take a peek
They'll
at
make
it.
you one.
Yeah, just go to the Think Tank website. Look at the blog.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Come on by. I thought you would have wanted the SIF shirt, but, I guess not. It's all right. Any
Please
questions?
bring one for Daryl next time.
People asked me for them. It was quite interesting. I'm like, no, I don't have extra.
Actually, Daryl, it's a great engineering design project, that bubble wand. It's wonderful. 4th grade does it. It's fantastic.
And TJ had his guitar from his Makey Music, so that was pretty cool.
He brought a sample.
I know.
Picture.
I know. Sorry.
Comments or thoughts on that? Beyond what you just gave us?
No, I think this is great. It's good also to hear the feedback of how these PD sessions are going. and what we're really getting from them and what the teachers are getting from them. I think it's really useful for us, and hopefully useful to our massive TV audience to also see it.
It is.
Thank
So
you.
we'll just keep going to
Yep.
tech updates. Thank you,
Yep.
Dr. Turner. So as far as tech updates, what we always do is we strive to provide a consistent and reliable environment to support learning. That's the main goal. So our small but mighty team is myself, Julie. Chris Camaro is our network admin. He's fairly new to the district. Charlie Sullivan, who's our tech specialist. And we also have a TBD, we have a technology specialist that we're in the process of hiring at this point in time. Some of the updates, and Julie and I always say, we did a lot, but there's a lot more that we didn't add. We need to start running a tally of everything we do during the year because you tend to forget at the end of the year. The LHS one-to-one program is fully implemented. All grades are all consumed by one-to-one, and they are either doing purchase lease or they're doing the BYOD. We did the launch of the new district website. If you haven't seen it, take a peek at littletonps.org. We think it looks quite snazzy. The implementation of the online Aspen Family Portal contact verification form. So what that means is we used to send home papers, and we'd wait for the papers to come back, and then somebody would data enter that in Aspen of who the emergency contact was and all of that information. Now it's done through an automated contact workflow. It goes home through the portal. The parent completes it, clicks send, and we put it in the system. No more data entry. So that was a big project. Installation of the centralized card access system. So before, we had the card access system, the computer at every single school. Now it's in one centralized location. We can provide card access to any school, to any contact from one location. We did a phone system upgrade for Shaker Lane and Littleton High School, their voice over IP systems. We're now doing MCAS computer-based testing for all schools. We're supporting makerspaces at Shaker Lane, Russell Street, and the middle school. And we are in support of the Littleton Portal to the World program, which is happening in the spring of 2020. So that's just some of the many initiatives that we had. You think of anything else, Julie? I know, I think we're pretty good.
No, but I mean, this is in addition to running the networks, making sure the firewalls are up and running, making sure the switches are up and running, making sure their air-high wireless access ports are, they do a lot of work for
hundreds of
a
mobile devices.
limited staff. They do a phenomenal job. I just wanted to say that.
I mean, I will say that the description of how we implement technology in the district has evolved over the 14 something years I've been on school committee, as dramatically, like, that's the biggest scope of change I've seen. Like, you know, we teach, the way we deliver curriculum has been modified to a degree, the way we do other things have been modified, but this has been like revolutionary. Like, this has been shocking how fast this has gone and how quickly the staff has evolved. And you can see by the presentations on professional development, not only are they involved, but like they are leading out on how we take advantage of technology in the district and the benefits that we receive by virtue of the efforts put forth. I mean, it's just surprising that they're moving that fast, and the amount of change that I've seen over the 14 years sitting here listening to these updates was a lot different, you know, back when I first started. It was about mostly just, do we have a network or don't we? And,
correct.
You know, gee, it seems like we can't have more than this many computers up on the network at one time, and now we're talking about, you know.
Right, and now we have security cameras in all the schools, we have card access at all the schools, we have.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's terrific.
A lot of
Thank
work.
you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You guys done?
No.
No, it looks like you're not
We'll
done.
be here all night.
All over this agenda. The one-to-one program at the middle school.
All right.
It's coming, hold on. Technology.
All right, so we have Principal Everhart coming up. Help us out with this one. So the past few years, we have been talking a lot about the LHS one-to-one program, and we're here tonight to discuss our proposal for a middle school one-to-one program. This is just, we're going to kind of go through a basic outline, and then Jason is going to talk a little bit about feedback from the staff and sort of school climate with introducing this type of program and the rationale. So basically what we're hoping to do is definitely a different model than what we deployed at the high school. So I think it's very important for everyone to understand that this is not the same model one-to-one program as at the high school. We are looking to try to implement this school year. We are hoping to implement for all students in grades 6th through 8th. Instead of doing a slow rollout like we did a course of 3 years for the high school, we're hoping to do this all at once. It would be a school-issued managed Chromebook, would be the device. We are looking to have a technology fee. The fee would be less than what we're asking for the lease purchase fee at the high school. So the technology fee that we are requesting would be $25 per student per year. Then we'll talk about the rollout, but that wouldn't start until the 2021 school year. The basics of the program, the Chromebooks would be allocated to the students for the school year, not for the entire year. So devices would be collected at the end of school and then reissued at school start. During the school year, students would be responsible for transporting to and from and charging at home. So really, it's a little bit different. We really retain ownership of the device. We're not giving a BYOD option. We're only having this one school-managed option for participation, I guess. So the current middle school Chromebook budget versus the proposal budget. So just to kind of give you an idea of what the Chromebook model looks like at the middle school right now and how we budget for reoccurring costs. Currently, the middle school is in a shared cart model. They have 2 carts per grade level, plus an additional world language and an additional unified arts cart. We look to replace 75 Chromebooks per year. That's what's in our budget. We ballpark around $250 per device, and we expect a 4-year cycle on these devices. End of life is getting longer. We're seeing newer devices that are manufactured are having a longer life cycle. But in the hands of students every day, we're still kind of budget-wise, we're budgeting on a 4-year cycle. So the replacement costs right now that we have in our tech budget is $18,750 per year to support this model. The proposed budget for the one-to-one program at the middle school, the outline of that, it would be 1 device per student, which would mean about 400 students, 400 devices. We would look to collect a technology fee of $25 per student per year. With that reoccurring cycle, we would need to replace 100 Chromebooks per year at the same cost, and we would anticipate a 4-year cycle. So the replacement cost for all those devices would be $25,000 a year. If we recapture with that technology fee, that would bring that number down to $15,000 a year. So once this program got underway, we would actually have a reduction in our tech budget annual costs. So our rollout plan, like I said, we are hoping to deploy this school year. In order to do that, the initial investment we would need to purchase, we would use the active devices that we currently have. So right now, we have 210 active devices that are not end of life. And we also have some money in our FY20 budget that we would be able to purchase more devices with. So based on that, what we have for devices and what we could buy this year with devices, that would bring us to a total of 255 devices. If we were looking to deploy 400, we still need another 145 devices. So that would be about a cost of, I can't see that number, $36,250. Is that what thank you. So that's what we're looking for the initial first year, to kind of get the program underway, everyone, all students participating. So we're looking for an initial investment of initial cost of that. And we would not collect a fee this year. That doesn't make any sense. Going forward into next school year, FY21, we would not need to purchase any devices the first year, because we have enough devices now, and we have enough devices to sustain a 4-year cycle. So after we collect the fee, we would towards this, we would be minus $10,000. And then come FY22 and FY23, we would then become this reoccurring, where we're purchasing 100 devices per year after the fee is collected at a cost of $15,000. So after FY22, we'd be sort of on a $15,000 budget for replacements to support this program. Jason, you want to talk about a little bit about why?
Sure. I spoke a little bit about this last week, and I'm sure most of this is self-explanatory, so I won't spend a ton of time going into it. But I think for myself at the middle school, this first set of bullets is really where the meat and potatoes of this are. It's in the instructional practice. You know, the kids will benefit from having, you know, the fairness and the equality of technology across the district. Of course, they'll benefit from being able to learn to use it and becoming more familiar with certain programs, especially as we tackle MCAS every year. But really, it's in the instructional practice. In order for us to really talk about technology implementation, integration, you have to be able to access the technology at any time. And under the current method, what we have are teachers who can book these Chromebooks from time to time, depending on the needs of other teachers at other grade levels, or depending on what's going on throughout the year. That makes it difficult for teachers to plan the kind of lessons that would really allow kids to enrich their learning. So for example, if you as a social studies teacher wanted to plan something around in geography in the 6th grade, for example, but the ELA teacher was using the Chromebook cards to work on some kind of expository writing, well, then you're not going to be able to do that. And so then you have to either put off the work that you want to do, or try and find ways to sort of Frankenstein it together over the course of a year, and it's just not effective instruction. What this would do is it would allow teachers to go from finding a way to get a hold of the cards, using a piece of technology and building a lesson around it. It would allow them to be able to plan the best lesson possible and then supplement it with the kind of technology that you need to really push that forward. And it might seem like common sense, but in many schools it's difficult to do that because you don't have access to that. So that paradigm shift of being able to use technology as a tool and not the driver of the curriculum is really what's going to take what we do at the middle school to another level entirely. So I'm really excited about this process for that reason, above all reasons. While everything else is certainly important, that one I think is where you're really going to see the payoff. You're going to see it in the kids' abilities, you're going to see it in their skills, you're going to see it in teacher appreciation, happiness, and success, because it's going to make their professional life exponentially easier. Thank you.
Any questions?
Oh, yes, are you done?
I think so, right? Yeah.
We're done.
Okay, before we dive in, can we just roll back up to the rollout slide?
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that we're all understanding this. So what you're saying is that if we do it this way, that we're going to have to buy 145 Chromebooks for FY20, $36,250. We're not planning on collecting the technology fee. Now that $36,250, we would do $18,750 anyway, because that's our annual replacement.
So.
Or is that 36,000 is totally additional?
So FY20, we had budgeted $18,750, but I've already purchased. We've already purchased 60 of the Chromebooks out of the 75.
Okay, so
I have 45 devices left to purchase with FY20. So
Okay.
So that number is above and beyond.
Okay,
my
totally
FY20.
above and beyond, okay, so that's fine. And then you're effectively saying that we'll be caught up in the cycle for FY21, we won't need to do any more.
Correct.
But we will collect the first annual fees, so that 10,000, so effectively goes down to 26,000.
Sure.
And then we go to the 15 per year. Okay, I just want to make sure we understood that, or I understood that, because you guys clearly did.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we will open up to questions and comments, and Daryl, you don't get to start. Erica, you start.
Always.
This sounds great. With the rollout, though, so a lot of the devices you already have, is that so we're not going to be getting rid of devices prematurely in order
No.
doing, okay.
It's end-of-life devices, so we have a reoccurring schedule of devices as they kind of come to their end of life, so.
So you're going to repurpose the ones that are on the cards and being
Yes,
used by
so-
world
so we
language,
have-
et cetera,
we
would
have
just
active
become
right
fed
now,
into the one-to-one?
210 devices
Yeah.
that are not end-of-life.
Okay.
Okay.
So those will get repurposed. So a component of this that I think we have to kind of, is very different than the high school, is it's not really one set of devices is being handed to a sixth grader and following them through 8th grade. It's, we're taking them back, and in 100 or, so you may not, when you come into 6th grade, it may not be a brand new device, it may be a 2-year-old device. It just depends on the allocation of those devices. So,
And it's a self-contained program, and I mean, there are many reasons for it, but one of the driving forces of a self-contained program in middle school is our MCAS requirements for writing online tests. They have to be, the computers that are used have to be under our control in terms of monitoring, and the only way we can do that is to own the devices.
And since they are school-owned devices, there will be some limits on what they can access in terms of social media and
so
things like.
in the same way that we handle our devices at the high school, and the same way that we handle our content filtering on our networks within the district, that same setting is applied through an extension that goes on the Chromebook. And so basically, the same environment that you are in network environment at the middle school stays with the Chromebook when you leave when you're connecting in someone else's network. So, so yeah, there's a level of, we provide the same network safety as we do in the schools.
Okay. And I guess my only other question is just more to Mr. Everhart, and just kind of a general thing. I asked the same thing about the program at the high school, is how, I think as teachers are more comfortable that they're a part of the curriculum and they're available to everyone, they're going to be used more. More assignments are going to be require them. Are we sure that all kids have internet access and those sorts of things, and how are we making sure that everyone has equal access?
Yeah, the equal access part is always a concern. Just handing a kid a Chromebook doesn't necessarily mean anything if they can't access it at home. I don't know if anybody, there was a episode of, I think it was 60 Minutes a couple of years ago. There was a school district that takes their school buses with Wi-Fi and parks them around town in areas where the kids don't have it, and they are able to get on Wi-Fi. So we've discussed options in terms of making Wi-Fi availability possible for everybody at little or no cost, so that we can take that off the board in terms of the equity piece, so that every student will have equal access to the technology itself.
We also have access to programs with providers based on annual income, which helps as well.
And I think the
And I
other,
guess
oh, sorry, go ahead.
that just reminds me of my other question, which $25 isn't much, but I assume that if that's an issue, that will be waived.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other part to look at too is, it's like giving someone a pet for a birthday, and then they say, here's a wonderful little puppy, but now you have to pay for it, train it, do all that. We don't want our teachers to feel as if we're adding something to their day or their professional life, that all of a sudden we're making them more responsible. So it becomes important for the school and the district to support that work. All right, if we're going to talk about technology integration, what does that look like? If it's just here's more websites to go to, that's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking about how can you infuse this into, and so that's where we get to be creative and find new and unique ways at the middle school level to talk about technology, and maybe technology that's not just in the form of a laptop or a Chromebook, but other ways to begin to use it in engineering and science, and so that it becomes a part of something that's woven into what we do. We don't take this lightly, that there's a support network that we have to create in order for this to function the way it is. But I also know that we have people in our district who are excellent at what they do, and we have staff who are committed to make sure that happens. And so I'm very excited for the rollout of this.
And we're not expecting increased technology use in every class. What we're asking for is authentic use of technology to enhance what's currently being done. We're not proponents of supplanting. We're proponents of finding better ways to teach our students. And I think that's an important point that needs to be driven home.
Absolutely. And that's really it. It's about the quality of the education we tend to deliver, not just how much screen time that we're going to increase or decrease in what we're doing. It's really about enhancing and enriching and frankly providing a love of learning and tapping into something that the kids are familiar with, right? Bringing education to an area that they are familiar with and in a world that they are comfortable with really is only going to help what we do. And it helps us to know that if we are willing to adapt, we're going to see that benefit later on. So I think this is more than just handing computers over to kids. It's really about a whole shift in the way we think about education at the middle school level.
We're truly victims of our success. The skill sets that elementary students bring to the middle school is unbelievable. With Julie and Heidi down in K-5, helping teachers and students integrate technology in the classroom. By the time our grade 5s enter middle school, we're just blown by how much they know and how proficient they are. And at times, and this is part of the process of learning, students are teaching teachers. And that's a good thing. But it's just amazing how far we've come in terms of student proficiency. And developing curricula based on ISTE standards was a pivotal point for us as a district to move our students along. And it's really nice to be where we're at this point in time.
All right, good, Erica?
Yep.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with the idea of the program and everything here. I guess my question comes back to the $25 there. I know I peeked ahead, we have a budget chart coming up, but I guess my first request would be is what would it take to absorb this within the operating budget instead of implementing a $25 fee?
Well,
and then the other question on it is, just for consideration, if I looked at the delta in price from $18,000 to $25,000, that's really only a $7,500 piece there. So where should we be getting that $7,500? The fact that it's reduces the price there implies that, to me, that we just offset our budget with a fee, and I'm not in favor of that at all.
I had the exact same question.
Well, let me
and so maybe you could clarify
Yeah.
some pieces there, but I mean, that's what struck me when I was looking at the presentation.
I mean, I've had the opportunity to introduce a number of technology programs in the districts during my career, and we've tried a variety of models. And one of the districts I had, we were giving MacBook Airs to everybody, grade 4 up. And what we found throughout time, that charging a minimal fee creates greater responsibility and accountability. You're not giving something for nothing. And believe it or not, that made a difference in how our students treated things. And if you think of your own children, everybody has their own theories of raising kids, and by the time you figure it out, they're already gone and on their own, and you can be really proficient when you have grandchildren, so to speak. But there is some merit in having that accountability through a nominal fee. And I mean, every population is different, but as a general statement, when we had done that in one of the districts I was in, we found that our repair costs went down. So
you could do that as a down payment that they get back if the computer is cared for.
I thought about that too.
We could.
The issue there is that, well, exactly. It adds a significant, I wouldn't say significant, but it could be a significant level of effort and the other thing then is it becomes almost penal, right? Like, you don't get your money back because you dropped it, one too many times, and so-and-so caught it before she dropped it, and she wins the lottery. I don't know, but.
And we are being frugal. I mean, every year we sit down for our budget discussions, and we never expect a windfall. And we don't know what the future is going to bring. So by building something in and making sure that we can perpetuate this program as long as possible, there's something to be said for that. And I'm going to go to the phrase, it's easy to give something, but it's hard to take it away. So 5 years down the road, if we run into budget dilemmas and we start charging fees, it's a lot harder to implement fees if you haven't had fees before.
What about making the fee only cover that difference in costs between the two programs, so $20 per start or whatever instead? I don't know what the number would be.
I mean,
but,
I
so
thought
we're
about
not
that too.
doing what
Right,
Daryl suggested.
Right, it's 25 the right
Our
number, it's
budget
15 already.
Yeah.
One thing to keep in mind is that not everybody's
Yeah.
going to pay the $25,
Yeah.
right? Because, we know that that's true. So you're not going to get $10,000. You're going to get some percentage of that. If the amount required to cover it is, I'm just cracking some numbers out here. If 62.5% paid the fee, you would cover the difference of the $6,250, which is the difference.
I mean,
So-
if you feel really strongly about again, you can't try something once you do it. You have to commit to it, and I think that's my own trepidation. But I mean, bottom line is if you're committed to making this work and making sure that the finances are there, which is kind of hard to do, but if you want to do that, I mean, I'm not going to balk at saying let's not charge anything, but you have to remember, once we go down that road, if we do run into issues, it's pretty hard to change the way we do business after we've started that.
But your statement on accountability, that does resonate a bit, but I don't know what that dollar amount.
Is this going to be a mandatory program? I mean, every child is going to be a part of it, and either they can afford to pay it or they can't? You know what I mean?
If they can't afford to pay it, we would waive the fee.
Right,
So
but then.
the expectation would be that
That-
we would hope that people would participate.
Well, it's a different question, because
Well,
we
but
know that if they can't afford to pay, because there's a lot of things that they don't have to pay for if they meet the requirement.
But is there a
The question
choice
is-
in the matter?
Right, that's the question. What if I don't want to? Because
Right.
I don't think it's worth it to my family to pay $25. I have computers at home, I have devices at home, I will send my daughter in with her own dang device. Why are you making me pay $25?
I mean, we're certainly willing to look at those exceptions, but you have to remember that, and it's fine if they do that, they just can't use that computer to write MCAS exams. And then you have to ask yourself, as a school committee, in terms of a policy component, we have no way to monitor those computers. And
Well, I'm not
that's something-
necessarily suggesting that we, it's just that, that's true, but at the high school, we've allowed for all of that.
Yes.
So it's not like as a district that we can't support that, we've already allowed for that.
Well, but
My
we're dealing with a different
question
age group,
is
too.
more with the fee. If it's something that we're a public school, if it's something that we are going to be requiring our students to have, charging them for it does not seem appropriate to me. If it's a choice, that's a different story. But if it's a necessity, and we're saying this is part of the curriculum.
I mean, you can look at it that way, and I'm trying to make sure I'm interpreting what you're saying correctly, because I could interpret it 3 different ways. So there's one interpretation that says, well, maybe a family just doesn't want to use a computer. So if we go back to the definition of a free and appropriate education, we would have to accommodate that wish. I mean, we wouldn't be fighting that. I mean, the second component, or second way of looking at it, is Mike's comment. They may have already bought their children computers. And I mean, we don't have a problem with that as long as we are aware that if we do not have the ability to monitor what's going on with that computer during the day, it may create some secondary issues for us, and issues that we can't get on top of.
This is what I would like to suggest. I would like to suggest that we move forward with no fee, and that we monitor, because we're adding, how many devices are we adding versus? 100. So we already have 300 devices in the building, right?
Well, yeah, yes.
Right.
So we know that, like, what our replacement rate is beyond the normal life cycle, right? I mean, I'm sure we have some that get dropped and or misplaced or whatever it is, right? We know. And we've been at this long enough where you guys should be able to tell us at the end of a year or 2 years, we're up 32% replacement. Okay, well, that's a different story. You know, now we have information that says, look, we've got to start charging a fee because it's clear that human behavior has shown us no fee, no responsibility. But if you come back in a year or two and you're like, no, it's normal, it's just like it always is, well, then the fee's not going to make any difference anyway. So why are we charging it? Because I don't really agree that we should be charging it, especially relative to a lot of the points that were raised. If we're going to require it, we can't charge for it. If we're not going to get, and I don't really think, because you guys have clearly made a determination that at this level, you don't want to do the way you do at the high school where they have their own device. And for a lot of the reasons you just cited, Dr. Clenchey, it adds a level of, you know, so.
Well, we couldn't do it at the middle school because we couldn't support MCAS testing.
Right. Well, we could give them a device for the MCAS if we knew.
But we wouldn't have enough devices.
No, because the kids that opted out, you would still, we carry a surplus. So you can't tell me that we wouldn't make it work.
So MCAS, if you figure you test a grade level a day, you would need to have.
Right, but I'm saying that the percentage of, most families are going to pay the fee and take the Chromebook.
Oh, yes.
So you're only going to have to, if somebody opts out, you're going to be talking about, you know, a few. And then we could support that, so.
I just want you to have, excuse me, the whole story here. You have to remember we self-insure as well. So if we don't charge a fee, then we are going to need to be able to draw from funds somewhere to replace any computers that are damaged, to fix or damaged beyond.
But I think the stickler for me is coming, you know, if we're going to require it, I'm still concerned about the technical definition of can we charge a fee for a required service in the school system. And I'm hesitant on going down that path immediately.
I mean, I think we all can see both sides of it, but I think the consensus on the school committee is that we should move forward without the fee. And you guys are well within your purview to revisit it with us as we get further down the road of implementation and we see what the practical implications are of not doing it. But I think we have a pretty clear consensus.
So in that case, we need to spell out what our costs would be from year to year. Because if we're not charging a fee, we would go up to $25,000 a year for replacement. I just want to make sure you understand that.
And it's like $6,250 more than you guys are trending for the normal replacement. Right. The question in my mind is going to be, and it's valid, and we want to know, is if it's more than $6,200 because you're replacing a lot more because they're not in the building at night, locked in a cart, so be it. All right, now we know. But in this day and age, I mean, these kids have phones, they have computers. I'd like to think that, but on the other hand, I just went to the repair yesterday, not my phone, because I've never had to repair my phone, but I've had to repair lots of phones. So we'll see. We'll see.
Right.
We'll see. But I mean, based on the information that's been presented to us, we're talking about an additional fee, additional cost to the district of around $6,000.
Right.
You could double that, triple it to $18,000. That's still not deal breaking to me from a budget perspective, in the sense that we can manage to get along while we evaluate the actual impact. And if we want to make a determination later that the fee is necessary for different reasons, then that's fine.
Yeah, and then I would, when we get to that point, probably at a future board, that I won't be here.
Well, we'll call you back.
Well, no, I would say is looking at a mandatory fee and whether that's within the the bounds of.
There might be a different way to do it.
Of,
Yeah.
We'll have to consider that.
Right.
The pieces there, because even the interpretation about whether you can charge a high school, your sports fees and stuff there, it took a lot of legal precedence before those decisions came down and exactly what the measures are on making those exceptions.
I mean, districts are already doing this, but I appreciate what you're saying. I mean, one of the reasons we're doing this is because we feel very strongly about the fact that in order to actualize our curriculum to the degree that we want to, we would like to have a computer.
Yeah.
So,
and I think you're hearing we want to try to support that as our first priority.
And that's great.
We're not dismissing the concerns that you've raised.
All right. Are you good, other than that?
Yep.
Okay. Matt, any thoughts?
No, nothing that I can add.
John? Thank you. I mean, I think that obviously this presentation and the process was so much simpler because this is ground we've covered, right? From at the high school level, but also ground that we've covered because we've had the carts in the middle school. You guys are already taking advantage of the opportunities that this type of curriculum delivery affords to us. You just want to be able to do a better job, be more flexible. Like Jason, your comments about the teachers now, I'm sure this will be more impactful on them than it is even on the students. The students are going to be like, what, I've always had a Chromebook. I'm like, well, a little more often, but now they have the flexibility and don't have to worry about scheduling, and I think that'll go a long way towards, making them embrace it even more. So I think this is a great idea, and I think we're ready for it, so. I think we have a support. I don't think we need to, do we need to take a vote on it or anything?
The only vote you would need is to vote for us to use another $36,250 out of school choice funds.
You want to make a motion?
Make a motion to authorize the superintendent to fund the additional 145 Chromebooks from the school choice account. I didn't put a specific dollar amount in case there's variation in bid.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys
Thank
done?
you.
Yes.
We're done.
All right, let's circle back towards old business. We have 2 items on there. Financial update, we had a question. We had an update at the last meeting on the current burn rate on our budget or run rate. We had a question about the facility maintenance spending.
Yep, so circling back to that question, the question was, why is the facility maintenance budget at 56% expended at this year, at this point in the year when on average it's at 20%? So the question is, if we look at that report and it's on the screen, year-to-date expended under facility maintenance is $503,000. The encumbrance amount is $302,000, which is 21% of that number. So what we've done is we've gone out and we've created purchase orders through the rest of the year for some of our maintenance contracts, so our HVAC contract, our cleaning contract, and a couple other ones. And what that does is it helps us track those expenditures through the year and then helps us manage at the end of the year whether we've got all the invoices for those contractors or not. That's really the purpose of that, and that's why that number's so high.
You haven't spent it, you just
We haven't spent it
allocated
yet, we've just allocated it and created the purchase order
by purchase
so we
order.
can track
Okay.
that, we can track those purchases relative to the actual expenditures from the vendors. So that's why that number is so high.
All right.
Any other questions?
Are we okay with presenting the information this way? Because now it's not an actual run rate anymore, right? It's what's going to run. We know you're going to run to 100%, right?
Correct.
Plus or minus.
Correct.
I mean,
So-
this is a practice that if the town would have had the automation years ago, I mean, this is the first district I've been in that we haven't run encumbrances up till now.
Okay.
And it just gives you a more
That's fine.
accurate accounting of where you're actually.
You've allocated the money, it's not available for anything else.
Right.
Correct.
We know that.
Right.
Right. And because actually, that number now should go up a little bit at a time on the stuff that you're actually spending.
Right,
as
so
you
what
go.
you're gonna see is
Right.
you're gonna see that encumbrance shift downwards and the actual
Right.
shift upwards.
But
as
the
you
overall
process those.
percentage will go up over time, but not as dramatically as
Correct.
it went up
Exactly.
since the last time we looked at this report.
Correct.
Right. It'll
Correct.
flatten out. Right. But in the idea, you're right, is to keep an eye on those other 2 columns and watch those move.
Correct.
Okay, that's fine. I think that's-
Does that make sense to
That
everybody?
make sense?
Yep. All right,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.
And then one more item under old business, update on the school district accountability.
Yes, last time we had a conversation about this, I had mentioned that we were labeled as requiring targeted assistance for Hispanic Latino in terms of participation rates, which amounted to one student. And the one student that we were referring to, we did not have agency over. So I wrote an appeal to the Department of Education, and we were successful with our appeal, so we no longer require targeted assistance. So I just wanted to communicate that. I know you knew it, but I would also like to spread the word, and I think it's already out there to the community, that we were successful in changing our status.
Yeah. So one thing I saw at so I think it was in the closing paragraph of that basically said we accepted your argument this time, but you're not going to get away with it again. So what are we implementing to deal with our districts that we've outlined?
I had to bring that second paragraph up, didn't I said to Chairman Fontanella, I'm going to take the win and run. You had to bring that second paragraph up. There are many things that come to my mind there with that second paragraph, but we're not going to discuss them tonight. But in terms of what we're doing in prevention, we've actually are creating a master spreadsheet that we're updating on a yearly basis. Our principals or administrators in general are going to be responsible for going through every student. And that will help. The challenge, though, is if you don't have agency over an institution, there's nothing that I can legally do. So they can smile and say yes, but if they don't adhere to the regulations, I can't force them to do it. I have no recourse, legal recourse. That's the frustrating part. So when you look at that second paragraph, I have some ways I would deal with it. I'll put it that way. But that's a frustrating component to me.
Yep.
Not a big deal if we as a district have agency over those other schools, it will be done. But I can only do so much with the authority I have, which is none when it comes to those other schools, and we don't have any say in it. So that's something that you need to know.
No, I know the technicality that you're talking about there, and I'm just wondering, in terms of us positioning ourselves, and I don't know whether it falls to the principals or our out-of-district placement coordinator, in terms of making sure we've had positive communications with those districts about their assumed responsibility for our students, and getting a positive acknowledgement back from them. It might not please the letter of that piece there, but
at least we have
since you don't have agency over them, as you're saying, is you can ask the state next is what more am I to do? Because by law, they're the ones that administer the test. Or I'm just positioning ourselves for understanding, how, are we demonstrating that we're doing everything within our piece there, our control.
So the out-of-district coordinator will have responsibility in that area, but we will also have
I'm not implying how you exactly do it. I'm just, asking in general.
And you have to remember, I'm making this simple.
Yeah.
Excuse me. It can be very convoluted, because we could have a student that in their high school career has been in 6, 7, 8 different high schools, and it becomes a lot harder when that happens. So, there are multiple factors. Well, we'll continue to do our best. That's all we can do.
I would argue that this should really be almost hypothetical, because the likelihood of this situation occurring again in a district our size, it will, but it shouldn't be frequent, right? Because this is the first time it really happened.
Right.
And it's highly likely that it won't happen again until,
Yeah, my only concern is because of our population size,
Absolutely.
one student changes our
That's the
entire.
problem, especially when you start slicing,
that's
the pool
finally there.
thinner and thinner.
But then you have to also ask yourself whether this is a statistically sound decision that should be made by the Department of Education. I mean, really.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a bigger conversation that needs to occur. And this isn't the only thing that I've discovered about the accountability, but no sense going into other areas if we don't have to, that certainly don't have a lot of statistical merit.
Yep.
my opinion, so. But anyway, the good news is we're successful and we don't have that status.
Thank you. All right, moving on, we were at the second portion of the meeting where we have input from interested citizens. We won't have any tonight. We're going to subcommittee reports, PMBC.
Just a few things. Because of just the different workloads of the PMBC, I'll be your PMBC point of contact as we move through the MSBA process there. For it, I'll try to make whatever time I can available for any of the pieces there. Obviously, I'll rely on them for any technical assistance for that there. The one other piece that I think we talked about it, but we didn't take a formal position on. We informally talked about since we're not going to probably use the Univent money for the pieces there, I'd like us to formally release that money back to the town for reallocation to other capital projects there. Right now, the wording in the warrants that money was authorized is specific to the Shaker Lane Univents there, so it can only be spent on that. So I think since we're not planning on executing the rest of that project, we ought to close that project out so that the town can take that off the books and then put it into something that maybe we could then reallocate for one of these other pieces, particularly the $40,000 to $50,000 we need for feasibility.
Well, that was going to be we would be advocating that it be released back to the school department.
That's what I would say when we work to close out the project, we maybe do a formal communications that makes that recommendation. Right now, it technically just goes back into free.
We can't insist on it, but we can advocate.
But the warrant is specific to Univent, so we couldn't reuse that money anyway.
Right.
And I don't want us to advocate spending it simply because it was allocated.
No, that's all right.
Do you remember how much that is?
We would have to probably, I think it's allocated on like still on 2 open years of PMBC, of capital funds.
I'll get with the
But
town
maybe you
accountant
could
and
work
check.
with the town accountant on it, and maybe
Get the exact dollars.
And maybe with cover letter from the administration to the Board of Selectmen, just saying that we're trying to work with the town, and we would like consideration of because maybe that 50,000 rather than coming out of PMBC could come out of free cash.
That's fine. And so the administration will work on that. When I get it, we'll bring it back here before we execute on it.
And I'll just let the PMBC people know that that's what we've agreed is that's the plan.
Yeah, because that'll
make sense.
I think to do that, it has to go to a town meeting vote to get reallocated.
As a capital project.
Right.
If we just close the account, we close the project, it would be just funds not expended. And then just roll back into free cash, as any project that had come in under budget.
Okay. All right, we'll work it.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm looking to try to see, also demonstrate to the town that we're trying to be a good player with the with the monies.
I'll get that number. I meant to and I forgot, so I'll get that number and get it to you.
All right, that it?
That's all from PMBC.
All right. So, Budget Subcommittee, you have in your packets a few slides, our FY 2021 initial budget analysis. So, working with the admin team, we have projected increases to maintain level services and staffing, salary increases to retain our current staffing level, our steps and lanes, $477,853. Our sped out of district, we're projecting no increase between FY 20 and 21. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in the next slide. Case transportation is up 36,000. We want to increase our operation utilities by 15,000, school supplies and materials by 10,000, and cafeteria expenses by 10,000, supporting that in the appropriated budget. So total increases for level services and staffing is $549,281. Then what we're advocating for is additional services and staffing. We covered the next phase of the phase-in for tuition-free full-day kindergarten in FY20 through school choice. So we want to move that into the appropriation. We want to stay on schedule. FY21 would be the 4th out of 5 years of the phase-in for that, so that's another $75,000. The administration is asked to increase 3 teachers from 0.8 to 1.0, And total for all 3 teachers added together, that would be $54,729. And then they would like to add part-time central office staff for HR and accounts payable for $49,400. So the total increases for additional services and staffing is $254,129. Combined with the amount to maintain level services and staffing, we're looking for an initial ask to the appropriation of $803,410 for FY 2021. The next slide, we just take a closer look at what's happening with our out-of-district tuition. So we started the current budget year, FY 20, thinking that we're going to spend $3.35 million. We've since realized our costs are going to go up a little bit, which is pretty typical for that number to move as we get into the actual fiscal year, up about $105,000. And the asterisk there is we will be able to cover that easily with school choice funds. So it's not a problem from a budget perspective in terms of being able to meet that requirement, but just want to know that our numbers are going up during this current fiscal year. However, we are projecting a decrease in FY 21, primarily based on the number of students that will be requiring services. The students that are going to continue to require services, the vendors are, we expect that, we know some of them will go up, others we're assuming they're going to go up because they always do, so as we budget, we've put that in there. So it's not like our costs for the providers are going down, they're actually going up as we would expect, but we do have some kids aging out of the system, so we will see, right now at least, we're projecting a decrease of about $147,000. So we're projecting in FY 21 that our out-of-district expenses will be, instead of be $3.35 million, about $3.3 million. That can be met through our current appropriated budget of $2.5 million, along with our projected circuit breaker reimbursement for FY 21, which we think is going to be just under $800,000, which is less than we were getting reimbursed this year. I think it was over 800, it was 800,000 something for FY 20.
Yeah, it's a $46,000 difference.
Okay, so that's kind of flattish. But right now, we're projecting that between what we have currently supported through the appropriated budget and what we're going to receive in circuit breaker, that we won't need to increase the amount we're spending on out-of-district in the appropriated budget, which is significant.
I think that's supposed to be good news, right?
It is. It is good news. I certainly wouldn't say, oh, terrific, like that's going to be the trend. There's no way of knowing that or predicting it, and you certainly shouldn't be planning on it. And it wouldn't shock me if we, as we get more information, normally we would be presenting this initial budget analysis at this time of year, expecting to bring this thing right to that budget summit that we do, which has been in December. That's going to be in February this year. Right. So I could easily go back to that budget summit and say, well, that's changed. We've had information about these kids and students, and now the reality is different, or the picture's changed, and we'll see how it plays out. But at the moment, we've taken a good, hard, close look at it, and quantified it, and this is what we're seeing.
So do we know who's aging out?
Yep.
Do we make any assumptions about maybe kids who potentially would be identified as going out of district? Is there a certain number that tends to happen every year?
Yeah. So
or do we
it's a good question. We've done that. So we feel like we know right now today we've done that, and this is a budget. So like for instance, I can't tell you that we know exactly how much the increase is going to be for our providers for the kids that are remaining out of district. We have a decent handle, and that type of thing we can historically project, so we don't expect our analysis to be off by any significant degree. And we've taken a good look at the population, so the kids that are leaving, the students that are leaving, we're pretty sure of. Like, we don't expect them not leave. Like, they're going to have a birthday,
right?
And that's what happens. So we're pretty good about that. But trying to say, should we budget that we might get 2 more students that are going to either in our district and are receiving services, or all of a sudden going to need to go out of district, or we're anticipating that families are going to move in, and on average this many. It's just not predictable. Like, we can't trend it, we can't model it. We just have to react to it when it happens. So if it changes, we'll know. If we do know, we'll update it and move forward. That's why you can see the 105,407, like already it's changed in this current fiscal year. And the same thing happened last year, but last year was like 500,000. You know, it was a significant amount, and it was an increase of 600,000 on the out-of-district tuition line in the budget, which caused a lot of angst as we went through the budget process. We got there, but it was harder than we thought it was going to be because of that number. Like, we can predict the two big drivers are always our staffing level, steps and lanes, and the out-of-district. The rest of the stuff is impactful, but nowhere near as impactful as those two things. And sometimes we get bad news. Most often we get bad news, like the out-of-district expense number is going to go up more than we thought. The providers are jacking their rates. We don't have control over that. It's approved by the state at the state level. We just have to pay it. Or kids, students are requiring more services, whatever it is, and we just have to make it work, and we do. But this year we're getting, as Darryl said, good news in terms of a budget perspective. We'll keep our eye on it, but that's the best we can really do, is kind of just keep our eye on it.
But I think, and maybe this is kind of where you're asking a little bit, I'm not sure. So we have some aging out, or, that's gonna go out. If we're not holding, if like two expensive ones move into the district, we're not budgeting for that. We're just gonna absorb that cost out of the revolving funds that we've been maintaining.
Right. That's typically what would happen.
Next year, though, there's gonna be sticker shock to the budget.
That's what would happen.
Shows up in it.
That's correct. And that's
kind of thing there.
Or,
I mean, that's been our strategy for all of the years.
Or, again, because it's November, right? And we're not gonna really present this to the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen in an open meeting until February. It could change. And, for instance, the $105,000 has already changed, but that's offset by what we know is gonna happen. So we're good. But if it changes, and if it changes in February, March, even up to town meeting, like, we can adjust the budget if we get information, and if we have to, we will, so.
And we have we're in a good spot in terms of a revolving fund, which gives us greater comfort in doing this year.
Right.
But I think as we talk about, because the revolving fund comes up every time we have the budget discussion, I think keeping those contingencies in mind, that if $500,000 of out-of-district moves into our district next week, we're not coming to the town, we're going to absorb it here.
Absolutely.
And
that's what we've been able
to keep the pressure from them to say, spend that down. Which in a lot of towns, though, they've spent that down to pretty much zero, so there is no budget.
Or then we do have to pad the budget on, the possibility of it happening, because, we have to. Now, we have that ability not to pad it, per se, but to also be able to react if we need to, if the realities change.
And we don't want to ever get to the spot where we have to go to fall town meeting and ask for funds. We've been really successful in not having to do that. It's not a good spot to be in when you have mandated costs and you're waiting for a vote to affirm that you're going to get the money, although you've already had to pay it. So.
All right, the next slide just shows how we're continuing to phase in. The plan is to phase in the impact on tuition. This year, we're in FY 2020, the third year of the phase in. We've gone from $4,000 to $1,750 for tuition. That'll drop to $875 next year, and then we phase in year 5 and go to tuition free. And then, speaking of school choice, this is what we're looking at. Our FY 2020 starting balance, a little over $1.5 million. We know we have our annual staffing that we support out of that, $250,000. We talked about the $105,000 in unexpected out-of-district tuition for FY 20. We expect to take in $450,000 for our current school choice population. So we expect to start FY 2021 with about $1.6 million in there. That can change, again, as we see how the budget gets spent, if there's any efficiencies. That would be the good news, and that number could move up if we have to spend more on different things. Chromebooks, we just said 36,000 or whatever we expect it to be. That number will go up and down, but we'll update it as we go. But I would fully expect that it's not going to change dramatically unless we have out-of-district tuition that is unexpected. So even if it moves up or down, it should be, right around that 1.5 to 1.6 something is where we should start FY 2021. And then we'll take a look at what we expect our enrollment in support of school choice as we go through the budget process. We're actually putting together some information that can help us maybe predict that a little bit and see where model it out for the next few years and see where we're at. Because I think we have, what do we say, 11 students graduating out of school choice this year in the senior class?
High school.
I believe it's
Yeah. So we need to think about that, 11 leaving, where does that leave us? What do we think we can get to? Is that 450,000? That's for this year's enrollment, but is next year's enrollment going to be at that same level or less? We'll have to think about that. All right. Questions or comments? All right. Policy Subcommittee?
We do not have a policy for first reading tonight.
Okay.
Daryl and I are still plugging away at it, so we should have it ready for the...
Didn't we talk earlier about animals in schools at the top of the meeting?
We did.
Yeah, so.
We're still within our policy
okay.
Yeah.
to do what we're doing. We just need to tweak it so that it has more information.
Yeah. So we're gonna update that. Be helping out with policies for a while there. The other one, and I didn't mention it to you, but we're corresponding on the organizations, and actually I think tonight's discussion bring it up there. I think I'd like to, I've been talking with Kelly a little bit informally. He started drafting something that starts talking about an MOU between some of the organizations. I'd like to probably finalize that up over the next couple of months and bring that to policy to formalize a gift donation policy relative to the 503s that have been operating in town here. I think we got some indications that it's not a revolving fund that we'd set up, it's called a gift account there. But likewise, as organizations are doing substantial fundraising, I think and even if we're going to start committing to projects, I think we do want to enter into a formal MOU that spells out the responsibilities between the organizations there. And like I said, my preference, it may not be in each organization's preference there, but if we're going to be having to, well, in that case there, with the state funds for the piece there, I would prefer that we just get control of the funds and then execute the projects there for those types of things. And that would apply, I think, for any work at Alumni Field, any work at the track, any work at any of the other fields that are under our control. We're going to end up having to have that money, so I'd like to put the mechanisms in place and start formalizing like an MOU process with the organization.
I agree. I think there's it's one thing to accept a one-time gift from, but we have organizations like the track organization, Friends of Alumni Field, even the athletic boosters. I believe there's a band boosters club, right? They do the mattress sale every year. So I agree. I think that we need to have MOUs in place with all of them. And not only is it important to have an MOU in place with all of them, but the framework of the MOU needs to be such that it's consistent, and as groups get ready to do fundraising, they know what they're getting themselves into and how they have to interact with us and conduct their business with us.
The one that I'd like to maybe just get the sense of the committee and administration in general here, because I've been looking at some of the financial disclosure pieces there, and most of the organizations in town do, it's called the postcard form, which doesn't really give much insight in terms of the finances, in terms of how much money they've raised, what the expense ratios are. I'm wondering if the board would like some sort of transparency in fundraising section in such a policy. I think the PTA did it was a 990 EZ, which actually lists their major fundraising events, how much was raised, how much the expenses were, what the nets were, and where those donations were applied to. And I think there's a transparency aspect of the fundraising that I think would be very beneficial to the communities, our community. I'm struggling with, I don't want to irritate our fundraising people there, but at the same time, with all of the things that happen with fundraising and stuff, I think people do start wondering what's exactly happening with the monies, and what responsibility we want, not responsibility, what reporting we would like as part of the fact that they're using the school's name for these fundraising activities and other pieces there for it. And I haven't come to my own parts with it there, but I also don't want to push that if that's not a sense of the board also.
Do they, on this form, does it just list, like, these are our fundraising, how much it was, and then this is how it was spent? It doesn't have to say, like, this money was spent on this thing.
No, I could bring
and this
in,
money.
a sample
Okay.
at a future meeting there. Like I said, it's, I looked at many of the things there to try to get a sense for how much money is flowing through some of the organizations, and if it's less, I think the IRS requirement is if it's less than $50,000, it's what's called the postcard, and it just says less than $50,000, which doesn't provide you any insight in terms of.
I mean, it's a legitimate consideration, because what you're trying to avoid is a situation where they fundraise $50,000, but their expenses were $40,000, so we netted 10. Well, okay, it costs money to do this, but then you look at closer and you realize, well, wait a minute, that ratio is out of whack. It shouldn't have cost you $40,000 to do that amount of fundraising, until you find out that the caterer they hired was the sister-in-law of the president, and she charged 3 times market rate for her bacon wrapped scallops, and these things happen.
Well, and I think it's even more valid in that some of these organizations are using the school's name or to fundraise, right? If it's the Fine Arts Booster, right, they're saying the money's going to support the LHS band or whatever, right? So that does put some onus on us to know where that money's going.
In this day and age, I think it's reasonable. It's not an unreasonable request for us to ask for a reasonable amount of oversight in that regard. Frankly, the government is asking for it. Now, the government may have their cap levels, and we might be such a small player, and our fundraising groups are smaller players, that they're not going to, the federal government doesn't really care, but we care. Because again, you're right. I mean, if the track organization says they're supporting the track, that we want that, we appreciate that. But if all of a sudden they're not supporting the track, or they're not supporting it the way they should be, we want to know that. They've been great, and everybody's been great, and I'm not worried about our current players. I just don't want us to be caught out that one time that somebody takes advantage of the lack of oversight. And it's to protect them as much as it is to protect us, And as someone who's involved in a 501c3, that's the way I look at it. It's protecting me from having to worry about it, and so I don't mind doing it. I want to do it because it's just easier.
So you've asked me to reach out to one 501c3. Am I to assume that the draft MOU is almost ready to go? Because if I reach out to them, we're going to have to, in my opinion, we need to do something in December. We can't keep.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to bring up about the financial aspect of it, because I'm torn on the language that we might want to use in there for it, because and with this, I think, I need to probably talk with you a little bit more.
And we can tweak the language a bit.
Yeah. And then I can bring back for the next meeting the sample. One of it's a stock IRS form that, it's $9.90 easy or something for it. I can send it out just for informational purposes, no comment, so that we don't have a discussion on it there. Just to show that the type of information I think would, is probably, several of them are already dealing with that based on their filing status or not.
They probably have the, I mean, if it's that simple, I would think they would have that information anyway.
I would imagine they would.
Yeah.
Just a suggestion, as we move forward, it's important that we have consistency in our expectations for all 501c3s. Because you can't expect more from one than the other.
No, and I wouldn't I wouldn't be singling out the two that we've been talking about, which is the LTA and Alumni Field. That would apply to the boosters, apply to PTA, all of the charities that are fundraising in the name of the schools. I think if they're going to fundraise in the name of the schools, we should have some reporting from them, is my feeling. And I get the sense that the board is on that same sheet of piece there. If it causes friction with them, we'll deal with that separately on it. But I think the discussion changes a little bit at that point.
Okay.
All right. And I'll work with you, Kelly, on refining my thoughts on that.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Any other business? All right. Before we adjourn, I just want to.
Thank you.
Were there any? No? We're good. Our next meeting is 12/5. Our next meeting after that was supposed to be 12/19. We're going to change it to 12/12, just because a couple of us had conflicts with that 12/19 date. So we'll meet the 5th, the 12th, and then we'll take a break over Christmas and come back in January. So we're all good with that, and we will adjust all the postings accordingly. And that's all I have. So I will entertain a motion for adjourn.
No adjourn.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you, LCTV. See you guys in a couple weeks.